Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill. Now, I already did a video on this particular book, but it's worth for me to do it again because the magnitude of information contained within the book. And I'll speak from personal experience when I say that I first came across this book in 2004 or 5 or something like that. And when I read this book, I realized that there was so many things that I didn't understand about how reality works. And then I went to go and implement it. And it was this one book that got me out of $50,000 debt when I was in corporate at the time. I incurred a large amount of debt. And it was this book, following the principles within this book, that allowed me to get out of debt in a relatively short amount of time. It was also the principles in this book that allowed me to attract the exact house that I was looking for, the very first house that I bought. It was also the principles that were contained within the book that while I was living in that house, after reading it again, that inspired me to leave the corporate job and start a business, IT business. And then throughout my entrepreneurial career, you could say full-time since 2009, I've been constantly revisiting this book over and over again to read it from cover to cover, only to have it reveal to me pieces that I didn't recognize, value, or understand the first time, or even the first 4 or 5 times that I read it, actually all the times that I read it, and took action on it. That being said, there's a lot of interesting thoughts that flowed through my mind when I came to this realization. I said, what if I read it again? So I actually sat down yesterday and read it cover to cover. And what was interesting was the information, again, seemed like it was new information. Now, granted, there were stories and examples and elements that I know I was reading the same book, but what stood out for me, the insights, the perspectives, the level of understanding that came from reading it again, prompted me to reevaluate some of the things I was doing, to magnify some of the things that I'm doing right now that are working, to eliminate some of the things that I was doing, but for some reason ended up doing again and creating bad habits, etc. And the list goes on and on and on. So that's why I believe that making a video on this book again is not only going to give you fresh insights and perspectives from my last video, but also further and deeper your understanding and hopefully inspire you to go and read this book multiple times over and over again in your evolution, in your journey in life. Contained with it are the principles of success. And as simple and pragmatic as some of these might sound, the truth and the realization is that we can always do more, better. We can always improve our ability to implement these principles. And we can literally keep ourselves busy for the rest of our lives, learning, growing, and implementing these principles as we get more and more success. And oftentimes you'll find that this might only be the one book that a person needs to read as far as personal development and success goes. I know I'm a fan of reading other books and so forth, but this is the original and classic, not as far as origins of the information contained within it, because there were many books and documents and texts, spiritual texts and so forth, that were written hundreds of years prior to Think and Grow Rich, that Think and Grow Rich was based on. And when you realize that, you recognize that the information is actually based on core principles that are life principles, not just success principles. So what I've done is I've gone through all the chapters here and I've pulled out some quotes, and we're going to get into discussion. This is probably going to be a very lengthy video, and I'm excited to do it because it's going to do a handful of things. Number one, it's going to reveal to you the specific elements that were covered in the book that you might have missed the first few times you read it. It might validate some of the things you already knew. It might shift your perspective a little bit on looking at some of the passages differently at a higher yield and output than you currently look at. And for me, it's going to give me the benefit for reprogramming my subconscious mind and further emphasizing and developing myself to integrate the principles to a higher degree, because no matter what level you're at, You can always integrate them further. And I'm able to create an audio here that I can personally listen to over and over again. I recommend you do so to keep yourself in a certain state of mind, a certain vibration. That's what Napoleon Hill calls it, the vibration. And this certain vibration is success consciousness, a certain level of consciousness that allows you to see opportunities that you might not have seen before. It's consciousness required to really grasp and understand the last video that I did, which was Opportunity by Eben Pagan. If you haven't seen that, I recommend you watch it. I'll put a link in the description. You'll notice that information looks differently when you see reality from a certain vibration or a certain state of mind. Success consciousness. The difference is that when somebody sees the world as success consciousness, or looking at the world from success consciousness, they start to see opportunities everywhere. And arguably, those opportunities were always in front of their face. It's just that they couldn't see it. They had to change their state of mind. They had to go into what Napoleon Hill calls a higher state of vibration to be able to see that. Now, that might sound very esoteric. So if you want to bring it down to what is common knowledge, then we know this, that when you change the way you look at things, the things you look at change. And even if that sounds so esoteric, understand the truth in this. There's been a lot of situations in life where people looked at those particular situations as a disadvantage or a roadblock, only to have other people come along and look at that same situation as an advantage or an opportunity. There are people that were born with not having a lot of wealth and so forth, in fact, a lot of poverty, and used that to build a burning desire, again, referred to in the book, and we'll talk about that, to acquire riches, to create success in their life. And if they never were born in those kind of circumstances, if they weren't surrounded in that environment, they might not necessarily have had the drive and the motivation and the discipline required to implement these principles. So truth be told, when you look at reality a certain way, reality presents to you information, opportunities, and even attracts certain people to you. If you are a person that is pleasing and you've got a good personality and you don't have a front up, you're authentic, you're energetic, you're enthusiastic, you're passionate, and you're on purpose, more and more people will be attracted to you because they want to be around that energy. And those people are usually those that form what he calls the master mind, in which you take one mind of a person and another mind of a person, and it creates the third mind. And from this, you can collaborate and connect and create results in the world, success, value for others, in which you'll get paid for, in which you can make yourself very wealthy. All of these are a net result of situations and facts of reality that are accomplished when you integrate these principles. So let's go ahead and get started. Chapter 1, the introduction. Truly, thoughts are things, and powerful things at that, when they are mixed with definiteness of purpose, persistence, and a burning desire for their translation into riches or other material objects. Thoughts are things, okay? Thoughts are things. And you can go really deep into this, and you can discover that thoughts cause certain things to happen, okay? Triggers people into action, creates things in reality, and it starts from a thought. That being said, this book is called Think and Grow Rich. And if you understand that you've got how many thoughts floating through your mind every single day from morning till night, arguably millions of thoughts, millions of permutations of thoughts, we've got to recognize that these thoughts drive our actions. It drives how our body functions. It drives how we see reality, how we look at things. And based on all that and a bunch of more dynamics, they create effect through the actions that are taken. And sometimes even through the inaction. There's a saying, wei wu wei, action through inaction. Sometimes a thought, be it a negative thought, causes you to take an action that self-sabotages and brings you back as far as progress goes, hinders your progress or sets you back. When having an alternative thought would have not caused you to take the action. And by not taking that action, you essentially accelerate your results. You accelerate and move faster because you didn't do the action that hindered your progress. And it all starts with thought. So what we need to do is we need to evaluate what we're thinking and make sure we're thinking a certain way. Thinking in terms of success consciousness, thinking in terms of wealth consciousness, or thinking in terms of whatever consciousness way of thinking that's required to achieve the outcome for you to be able to create the reality that you want. I've learned from many years of experience with men that when a man really desires a thing so deeply that he's willing to stake his entire future on a single turn of the wheel in order to get it, he is sure to win. Now, why is this so? Because if you do that, and you have a desire to do that, to achieve the result that you want, and you're not willing to accept anything less than that, then interestingly enough, you'll start to see some of the opportunities that were always there in front of you, but because you are looking at it from the lens of potentially having a scapegoat or procrastination or elements of fear, which we're going to talk about later in this video, you weren't able to see them. One of the most common causes of failure is the habit of quitting when one is overtaken by temporary defeat. Every person is guilty of this mistake at one time or another. See, a lot of times success comes just a few steps prior to quitting. And it's interesting because you'll find that to be true in a lot of situations. Success comes as a result of one thing that seemed like it was going to end everything and would have to send you back to the beginning or essentially throw in the towel and quit. But if you muster up the persistence and the faith that you're going to achieve the outcome, interestingly enough, that obstacle then becomes the opportunity that you step on or through or whatever or work with to be able to actually create the outcome within the next few steps. Think of a time in your life where this was true. You probably found many times in your life where this is true. That's the case for me. I can find a lot of times in my life where this to be true. If this is true, that's very interesting because what does that mean? Like, what does that really mean? It means that a good way of thinking, a good way of looking at reality is that life is a test of growth, a test of character, and is essentially a gigantic personal development workshop, where if you work on yourself, you rewrite the meaning, and you integrate the principles contained within this book, you're better equipped during a situation when it looks like you've exhausted all options to have the motivation, the courage, the persistence, the knowledge. We're not talking about blind faith here. We're talking about acquiring specific specialized knowledge, seeking counsel, etc., to be able to turn whatever that obstacle is into an opportunity. And there's been many, many success stories in our world. You can read tons of autobiographies where people were able to do this. And you could say, as a result of them doing it, they acquired a specialized understanding, a certain level of wisdom, which maybe a lot of people don't have. And with that added wisdom, they're able to share it with others, such as the case with this book. And also, if they find a situation in their life that requires the same level of wisdom or something similar to overcome that obstacle, they're now able to do it. And they're able to help others to do the same thing. And because they can help others do the same thing, they become more valuable. And because they become more valuable, they make more money. They get paid more. The reason why you would hire somebody who's highly specialized based on the experience that they have is because no matter what money you invest in them to solve that problem, provided that you did some quantification, etc., their expertise and their ability to solve it really effectively, efficiently, and relatively quickly can make you multiples of return on that investment. That's why some of the best consultants in the world sometimes get paid $100,000 a day just for the consulting. Now, someone might look at that and say, well, how does a person get $100,000 for consulting? Are they just really good salespeople? What they fail to understand is that the problems that they're working on when solved based on their expertise, which is usually gathered and realized and developed after they've gone through many failures in their lives, because they have the persistence to overcome those failures and get the golden nugget or the insight. That particular specialized knowledge, when applied to the client's business, can return on that $100,000 investment millions of dollars. Okay, so would you pay somebody $100,000 to get, guaranteed, $1 million? Well, some of those opportunities do exist. And if you would like to be the person that can command the higher fees, then you must understand that if you are not embracing failure and looking at defeat through the lens of what I'm talking about here, you will not have necessarily what it takes to acquire the wisdom. And a lot of these wisdoms that these highly specialized people are getting paid for is not found in a book or in the education system, etc. It's very, very specialized knowledge, and we'll talk about that also because he's got a whole chapter dedicated to that. Before success comes in any man's life, he is sure to meet with much temporary defeat and perhaps some failure. When defeat overtakes a man, the easiest and most logical thing to do is to quit. That is exactly what the majority of men do. More than 500 of the most successful men this country has ever known told the author their greatest success came just one step beyond the point at which defeat had overtaken them. Failure is a trickster with a keen sense of irony and cunning. It takes delight in tripping one when success is almost within reach. Again, it's a test. But the truth is this: how you think and how you see reality to work is going to determine the actions you take. And the actions you take are going to determine if you see success or if you don't. Keep your mind alert, and you will observe exactly what strange power came to the rescue of the child. It was a story from the book. You will catch a glimpse of this power in the next chapter. Somewhere in the book, you will find an idea that will quicken your receptive powers and place at your command for your benefit the same irresistible power. The awareness of this power may come to you in the first chapter, or it may flash in your mind in some subsequent chapter. It may come in a form of a single idea, or it may come in the nature of a plan or a purpose. Again, it may cause you to go back into your past experiences of failure or defeat and bring to the surface some lesson by which you can regain all that you lost through defeat. The answer called for a description of 13 principles, but remember as you read, the answer you may be seeking to the questions which you have caused you to ponder over the strangeness of life may be found in your own mind through some idea, plan, or purpose, which may spring into your mind as you read. One of the reasons why you would read a book like this or listen to an audio like this is so that you are being evoked insights and perspectives. Certain insights and perspectives are generated as a result of your thought and your mind being in a certain vibrational frequency as you are connecting and experiencing this information. Now, I'm talking about vibe here, okay? So again, not to get too far out there, but when you read something that inspires you and uplifts you, or you are consuming some information that makes you feel great, even so much as to music, notice how you think differently. Notice how you see reality different. If you are experiencing anger and frustration, it seems to have gone away. It just disappears. That's what I'm talking about. When you're at a lower vibration, you experience more anger, fear, frustration, and this kind of information can even seem kind of stressful in those kind of situations. But because you've already experienced, and all of us have, high points in our life, when we have a lot of confidence, when things just seem to flow, results just seem to happen in some circumstance of our life, we've experienced it, so we can put ourselves back in that state. We can put ourselves back in that state of mind. And we do that by following the principles contained within this book. And when we do it, we generate the ideas. And not just random ideas, ideas that are based on creating results that are win-win for you, your clients, your prospects, etc., that come from a place of abundance, that are not driven by scarcity or fear or anything like that. And these ideas will pop up and pop up quite frequently the more you maintain this state of mind. Okay, so you might be feeling it now as you are listening to this audio. You might be feeling a heightened sense of empowerment, a heightened sense of vibration, a more empowered feeling. And what you want to do is you want to maintain it, okay, while you're going through the listening and then even after. And as you maintain it, notice the ideas that pop into your mind. Before you go any further in our approach to the description of these principles, we believe you are entitled to receive this important suggestion. When riches begin to come, they come so quickly in such great abundance that one wonders where they have been hiding during all those lean years. This is an outstanding statement, and all the more so when we take into consideration the popular belief that riches come only to those who work hard and long. Now, what Napoleon's saying here is that he's not saying that you don't work and you don't put in effort, you don't take action. It's saying that we need to disconnect and understand something very important. We can do things in a way where we're inspired, uplifted, energized, and motivated. Our vibe is high, our energy is high, and as a result of it, evoke insights, perspectives, be able to see opportunities that we wouldn't have seen before because we're more in an empowered state. Very much related to the concept of flow by Mihai Csikszentmihalyi. I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. When you are in this space, you are more likely to create opportunities. You are more likely to execute on opportunities with confidence, speed, and decision, which are elements of success, than when you are frustrated, stressed out, etc. And what a lot of people find themselves in are opportunities and jobs and whatever, businesses, that they don't like to do necessarily. They're stressed out, they're frustrated, and even if that produces money, they'll still stick with it because they believe that there is no other way. And we need to disconnect from that. There are many people, myself included, that have found ways to work, to create value, to build businesses, etc., that inspire, uplift, and excite and keep a person at a higher state of consciousness, wealth consciousness, abundance, way of looking at reality versus scarcity, and so forth, that actually has an effect on the amount of success we can create, the amount of wealth we can create. Think about this for a moment. You have 24 hours in a day, and let's say you sleep 8 hours. What do you do with the rest of the time is going to determine the kind of results you get based on the effort that you put in as far as value. And we're talking about creating value for others. The truth is this: you are always going to get paid in return based on the value you create for others, based on what value means to them. We can't tell people what value is. We have to learn to understand people so we can see what value is for them and create products, services that are needed and useful and offer it to them. And when they buy it, fulfill on it to a high degree, high level of quality, high level of expertise, and then you get paid well for it. That's how wealth shows up. That doesn't necessarily mean it requires a person to be stressed out and perform work where they're burnt out. And another way of looking at this is think about when you go to a restaurant and the staff and the chef and everybody involved in that restaurant is absolutely passionate about what they do. They have a great sense of excitement and pride on the value they create based on the food that they serve and the experiences that they generate for those that come to the restaurant. Wouldn't you rather go to a restaurant like that versus going to a restaurant that maybe has really good food, but people are stressed out in there, they have inefficient processes, they don't really know what they're doing to the point where they're actually projecting that energy over to the customer and souring the experience? I know from personal experience, I'd rather pick the first restaurant. So we need to disconnect ourselves from the idea that riches and abundance comes from this hard work in the sense of stress. Okay? We're talking that you can dedicate your entire day doing things that you're passionate about that will create value for others, and a day will go by and it will be like you were playing the whole day. You were just having fun. This is what we're talking about. We need to be able to have longevity here. If you're doing something that stresses you out, there's only a certain amount of time you can do that for. Those that work very hard and stress themselves out to create money don't last very long. And if they do, they get there stressed out, frustrated, experiencing all kinds of physical, mental, and emotional issues when they get there. And a lot of times it impacts their family life, etc. And so we need to rethink how we do that. When you begin to think and grow rich, you will observe that riches begin with a state of mind, with definiteness of purpose, with little or no hard work. Now, how can this be true? Well, look at sales, for example. Sales is the highest paid profession. If you have the ability and the confidence to find the ideal prospects and connect them with a product or service in which you make good money either from commission or you sell your own products or services, you could do that all day and make a lot of money. And in order for somebody to be successful at selling, they have to know how to sell and they have to understand the selling principles. They have to read books like Spin Selling by Neil Rackham, Way of the Wolf by Jordan Belfort, which I did a video on. I'll put a link in the description. They have to understand all that, but they also have to bring with them a certain way of thinking, a certain way of looking at reality. They have to rewrite the meaning of rejection. They have to rewrite the meaning of what most people consider to be persistence. They have to rewrite all kinds of meanings that other people will look at from a disempowering perspective while experiencing the process of selling. And when they have this right state of mind, they exude passion. And when they have this exuding of passion, when they're excited to do what they do, they're more actively able to look for how to optimize their selling. They're more likely to attract a higher level client. Because I don't know about you, but I personally do not like to deal with a salesperson that's unpleasant, whether it be a real estate agent or a broker or a client or whoever. And what I've noticed is that I've gotten a lot of feedback based on working on this and the realization of this, that some of my clients revealed to me that the reason why they like working with me is because it's fun, because it's pleasant, because it doesn't seem stressful. We still get the job done, and I believe to a higher quality than maybe some of the other providers, but even if I do it at the same level of quality as the other providers, just by adding that excitement, that passion, that fun to the equation, the clients pick me. And as a result, I'll get more sales. So many different ways of looking at this. You and every other person ought to be interested in knowing how to acquire the state of mind which attracts riches. Success comes to those who become success conscious. Failure comes to those who indifferently allow themselves to become failure conscious. The object of this book is to help all who seek it to learn the art of changing their minds from failure consciousness to success consciousness. Now we're covering many points in this discussion, and there are many more points in this book, on how to acquire success consciousness. Success consciousness is not just about how much money you make or just about money. It's about how you go about doing it, how you feel when you do it, the vibration that you put out. And we'll talk more about why this is important as we get into this book. But just at this state, we should know that this entire journey of wealth creation or creating success in our life doesn't have to be one that is stressful and full of hardship, etc. Now, the interesting thing about this is, even though that the Think and Grow Rich is one of the most influential books for creating success in this world, there have been many success stories that can be attributed back to Think and Grow Rich. There's still only a minor percentage of the population that has access, who has read this book or understands this principle, and an even smaller minority who actually take these principles and apply them, and an even smaller minority who go back and revisit the principles and apply them over and over again. And then there are even smaller minorities of masters who are able to create all kinds of higher level success as a result of doing this for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. Now, this book has been around arguably longer than any one of us have been alive. You attract this book when you're ready, when you have a certain level of success consciousness. You might have seen this book before. You might have seen it on a bookshelf or somewhere. But until you had a certain level of success consciousness, you didn't have the intuitive nudge to go and pick up the book and read it. That's what we're talking about when we say attraction. And when you pick up the book and you read it, you open up more layers of understanding. When you implement it, further layers of understanding. And what you start to notice is that success starts to increase in your life. And I want you to look at it as incremental and sometimes quantum leap levels of success increases. But the goal here is to place ourselves in success consciousness, and we'll talk about many ways of doing it, as much as possible throughout our days so that we can see more opportunities, so we can execute upon opportunities, so we can do it with greater joy and passion to create the results that we want. And that's what we're talking about when we say success consciousness. On the flip side, failure consciousness won't attract a book like this, won't appreciate a book like this, and probably won't appreciate anything or anyone that will contribute towards success. Now, there are many situations that we've experienced in life that dip us into failure consciousness. And just because a person is in success consciousness right now doesn't mean they're going to remain in success consciousness next week, next month, next year, etc. This stuff takes work, okay? It takes discipline, which is one of the important principles. It takes persistence. It takes awareness. It takes focus to make sure that everything we are doing every day keeps us in success consciousness. Again, that's a rare way of thinking, but then again, if you look at it, not a lot of people are able to work with this kind of information and turn it into some kind of concrete results. There's probably a lot of people that read this book and maybe only achieve some level of success or marginal level of success. But if you want a high level of success, you have to stay at a high level of success consciousness for an extended period of time. So this is where we get a little bit more esoteric, and I want you to keep an open mind here. Even if you don't believe what is being talked about here, understand that there are probably some signs that are resonant with your experiences. The ether in which the little earth floats, in which we are moving, have our being, is a form of energy moving at an inconceivably high rate of vibration. And that the ether is filled with a form of universal power, which adapts itself to the nature of the thoughts we hold in our minds and influences us in natural ways to transmute our thoughts into their physical equivalent. Our brains become magnetized with the dominating thoughts, which we hold in our minds, and by means which no man is familiar, these magnets attract to us the forces, the people, the circumstances of life, which harmonize with the nature of our dominating thoughts. Now I'm going to speak from experience on this, that when I keep myself in a certain state of mind, and I invest a lot of time in ensuring that my success consciousness is high, I recognize that I feel a certain way. That's what we're talking about when you say vibration. And what I notice is that I tend to attract more people that come and approach me that are in that same level of consciousness. And a lot of times people who are not in that same level of consciousness do not come up to me, do not contact me, do not email me, etc. It is to be said that we are all connected. A lot of spiritual texts and philosophies believe that to some degree all humans are connected. We're individuals, but we're all connected. And the manifestation of this in reality is obviously the internet and wireless networks, cell phones, etc. But this actually goes deeper. You might have experienced some points in our lives where you think about somebody and then that person calls you the next day. Oftentimes when I walk into the room, I could read the vibe of people, and I'm sure we can all do this. When somebody gives us a pleasant vibe, we're more likely to go and talk to them. And that pleasant vibe really means that they're resonating at a certain level of consciousness that actually is valuable to us. So in other words, when we're talking about value here, We want to be in a consciousness that projects value. When you have success consciousness, you project a certain vibration that puts out the indicator that you are a person of value. And this magnetizing feeling that the other person feels is that right there. So we've experienced this. And you'll notice that a lot of people will start to gravitate towards you who are looking for that. And on the flip side, when you're in the presence of somebody that has success consciousness and you're around them, notice how you begin to think. Notice how you begin to feel. All of a sudden, you feel very empowered, very inspired, etc. I think I mentioned the story one time when I was about 26 or 27 years old. In the company that I used to work for in corporate, right next door, there was a big building, and there was a yellow and black Lamborghini in the parking lot. And one day I approached the man who owned the yellow Lamborghini. He was sitting in a parking lot, and I pulled up right beside him and began to talk with him. I might not have mentioned how I felt when I was talking to him. Yeah, I remember distinctively and very clearly, as I was talking with him, I felt my mind was working differently. My brain was working differently. All of a sudden, I was seeing opportunity everywhere. All of a sudden, I felt like I was in some kind of bubble or some kind of movie where there was no fears, there was no scarcity thinking. There was all this clear thinking that showed up about how I could create wealth for myself. I believe, and I still look back to this day in reference to what we're talking about here, that the reason why he was able to attract and create that life, yes, he was doing things. He had a successful business. It was a well-organized business. Is either through the process or prior to that, he kept himself in a success consciousness state. And as a result of keeping him in that state, he was able to do the actions to create the results that he wants. And arguably a very high level of results if he's able to have a car like that, which was at that time a $300,000-$400,000 car. And as a result of that, when people were around him and he kept himself in this state, they begin to transform and feel and adjust to that same level of energy. Okay, think about it as hot water and cold water. If you take hot water and you pour it into cold water, it's going to turn warm. So imagine his vibration or his energy and my energy, and me being very receptive and open because I looked up to him, his energy going and harmonizing with mine and essentially transforming me in that moment. This is why it's important to get around people that have this kind of success consciousness, because you'll find just by being around them, you'll start to think differently. You'll start to communicate differently. You'll start to project and present yourself in a way that's more powerful. One of the ways that I've improved my ability to become a better communicator is by staying in proximity and being around people that are excellent communicators. Just being around them, just hanging out with them, being at the same room. I notice I pick up a lot of things. A bunch of things will be conscious. A lot of it will be unconscious. You could say energetic. Before we can accumulate riches in great abundance, we must magnetize our minds with intense desire for riches. That we must become money conscious until the desire for money drives us to create definite plans for acquiring it. So we're not talking about here just creating this desire for riches. The desire for riches has to be so amplified and burning in nature that it makes us want to get out of bed in the morning. Okay, we don't need the alarm clock, really. We want to wake up and we want to take action. And we realize that taking random action is not going to help us. So what we do is we create a plan, a definite plan, a specific plan that we follow, that we're willing to optimize as a result of the actions we take. But we're so motivated to do this that this doesn't seem like work. Okay, this doesn't seem like hard work. When a person does not have the money consciousness and the burning desire to create this, they're going to look at creating the plans and the spreadsheet and stuff like that as work. When you raise your consciousness to a certain point in success consciousness, doing those plannings, the brainstormings, and the spreadsheets and stuff like that become something you actually enjoy doing. And I'll speak from personal experience. And I actually did a whole video on my finance spreadsheet, and you'll notice I speak very passionately about the finance spreadsheet. There was a time in my life where I hated doing math or any kind of finances. But because I have the burning desire to keep leveling up as far as my contribution and success in business, because that's a way of life now. I've just been so involved with it. Discussing and working and evolving my spreadsheet is a key component that I'm excited about, and I very excitingly share it in that video. Chapter 2, Desire. Every person who wins in any undertaking must be willing to burn his ships and cut out all sources of retreat. Only by doing this can one be sure of maintaining that state of mind known as a burning desire to win, essential to success. Okay, burning desire to win. Now, this doesn't happen overnight. We're going to talk about a process to keep working and focusing and not giving up on our number one chief aim, and I believe everybody should have a number one chief aim, and this can change in different stages of your life. To focus on it and dedicate your time to learn, study, work on every single thing you can in all areas of your life that move you towards that objective. And find the joy, find the passion in doing all those things and create positive meaning. And a lot of that can be learned from the various books I've covered in my channel and the various experiences that I had that I shared with you, until you feel this burning desire to win. Burning desire to win, for example, if you want to be an entrepreneur, requires a person to literally, leave their job and go and become an entrepreneur. In order to do that, you must have a burning desire. Okay, you can't half-step that. You got to have a burning desire, because if you don't, when you go out there, you're not going to approach it with the confidence and the discipline and the focus. You're going to be approaching it with shyness and timidity, and the results are going to reflect because you become what you think about. So you have to recognize that whatever it is you're after, you have to burn all the bridges behind you. Okay, now this might sound very extreme to a lot of people. Now, the level that you're willing to take this to is really based on your comfort zone. But I'll tell you this, from my own personal experience, that's what I've done in multiple stages of my life, and I have always, universally always, been happy with the results. It doesn't mean it was comfortable while I was doing it, and even after I did it, there was a period of uncomfortableness. But the burning desire allowed me to get through it. Okay, keep going. And if you follow the principles within the book and you revisit the book after you have decided that you're going to go down this pathway, whatever the pathway may be for you, we're not just talking about entrepreneurship, various areas of your life, the book will be something that you could refer to regularly. So if you lose faith, you lose confidence, you meet with temporary defeat, that's a skill. We talked about this earlier. Everything in life is a test. Those areas are opportunities to grow. And one of the things that you learn about entrepreneurship, if you've been in it for long enough and you approach the actions you take every day in entrepreneurship with discipline and focus and awareness, is that you get very good at rewriting the meaning. What a lot of people are afraid of, you no longer fear. What a lot of people see failure, you start to see opportunity and success. Where a lot of people wouldn't take action and wouldn't even imagine doing the things that you do with ease. And this is done through repetition, by daily discipline of doing the things. And it's those things that produce the results that most people don't get. And it's a book like this that you could refer to rewrite the meaning, to rewrite the stories, because we're talking about right here that you become what you think about, and this is Think and Grow Rich. Okay, Think and Grow Rich. Every human being who reaches the age of understanding of the purpose of money wishes for it. Wishing will not bring upon riches, but burning desires, or desires with the state of mind that becomes an obsession, then planning definite ways and means to acquire riches, and backing those plans up with persistence, which does not recognize failure, will bring riches. So again, the formula. Desiring riches with a state of mind that becomes an obsession. Okay, for me, I was lucky in my life that I didn't come from a family of wealth. We started with very humble beginnings. And I did not like not being able to afford anything that I wanted. And I had a burning desire to be able to, at one day in my life, go out and buy whatever I want and so forth. That brought me into the world of entrepreneurship. And it was great because entrepreneurship, and even when I was in corporate and so forth, taught me how to create value for others. And I realized that it was through massive contribution to others, creating lots of value, what people see as value to improve their lives, I can make money. And that became an obsession, okay, repeatedly. You'll hear me talk about this a lot on my channel. Then, along the journey, definite planning. You get better with planning. There's certain kinds of planning tools and so forth. A lot of times when you start out in this journey, you might not be planning as much, but as you start to evolve, you'll get better at planning and brainstorming, etc. Now, backing up those plans with persistence, because sometimes those plans don't work out. And when those plans don't work out, you got to optimize those plans. If you have a burning desire, optimizing those plans is going to be a logical process. But if you don't have a burning desire to do it, and you don't cultivate that burning desire, and you're not really passionate about it, then when you meet with temporary defeat, you don't have the persistence to get up and try again by optimizing. And that's why we don't want to recognize failure. We want to see failure as objective data of what we need to optimize, because what happens is, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, is that the way you think it's going to work, and I found this to be true with a lot of entrepreneurs that I've talked with, and I speak with a lot of entrepreneurs, is that the way they thought it was going to work when they created the results, the success, was oftentimes different than what actually happened. Okay? The way they thought it was going to work was different than the way it actually happened. In other words, they had to optimize, they had to readjust, they need to pivot, but they kept going. Okay? They kept going. The method by which desire for riches can be transmuted into its financial equivalent consists of 6 definite practical steps. Let's talk about these. Number 1, fix your mind on the exact amount of money you desire. It is not sufficient merely to say, I want plenty of money. Be definite as to the amount. Number 2, determine exactly what you intend to give in return for the money you desire, because money comes as a result of value that you create. Establish a definite date which you intend to possess the money you desire. Create a definite plan for carrying out your desire and begin at once, whether you are ready or not, to put this plan into action. Now, interesting thing about this world we live in, this reality we live in, is I find that the faster you take action, and it might even seem obvious, the faster you produce the results. That sounds very down-to-earth and pragmatic. But another interesting concept that I found is that the faster you take action, it's almost like something happens. It's like you alter some kind of code in reality, and this is going to sound really far out. But you're met with an opportunity or some kind of quick feedback or quick element that wouldn't necessarily be there unless you acted fast. Okay? Think about how this is true in different stages of your life. Write out a clear, concise statement of the amount of money you wish to intend and acquire. Name the time limit for its acquisition. State what you intend to give in return for this money, and describe clearly the plan through which you intend to accumulate it. Read your written statement out loud twice daily, once just before retiring at night, and once after arising in the morning. As you read, see and feel and believe yourself already in possession of the money. Okay, that's very important. They put it in cap locks, and there's a reason. Because by seeing and feeling and believing yourself already in possession of the money, you magnetize yourself and you get yourself to a certain way of feeling, of vibration. And we already talked about that. That's what we want to achieve for success consciousness. That's success consciousness. When you're in success consciousness, you're going to attract, you're going to be able to see the opportunities and draw people to you and so forth, and you can feel it. You can feel when somebody is in success consciousness. Now, I've been in this entrepreneurial world for so many years now, and I've been around many entrepreneurs that I could tell, literally tell by how they feel when I'm around them, how I feel when I'm around them, if they're going to get success or not, or if their success is going to be short-lived or not. In other words, sometimes people find themselves in success consciousness, maybe after they've attended a seminar or read a book, but it's not sustainable. They're not maintaining it long enough. And a lot of times they'll find is that when they're in success consciousness, and they're putting off this vibe, they're attracting a lot of opportunities and so forth, they're taking action, they're producing results, they're creating plans, they're motivated and so forth, they are excited to wake up in the morning. Then, something happens, temporary failure, and that's it. They drop. Their vibration drops, they start going in scarcity thinking, they go back to failure consciousness. And as a result, they start to attract, they start to see reality from that perspective. And they either give up or they find another thing to bring them back up to success consciousness, which is okay. But the better way of doing this is to maintain it consistently, okay? Consistently maintaining the success consciousness. And we do this through the affirmations in the format that we just mentioned. As you read, see, feel, and believe yourself already in possession of the money, get you excited and started. It is important that you follow these instructions described in these 6 steps. It is especially important that you observe and follow the instructions in the 6th paragraph. You may complain that it is impossible for you to see yourself in possession of the money before you actually have it. Here's where a burning desire will come to your aid. If you truly desire money so keenly that your desire is an obsession, you will have no difficulty in convincing yourself that you will acquire it. The object is to want money and to become so determined to have it that you will convince yourself you will have it. To the uninitiated who has not been schooled in the working principles of the human mind, these instructions may appear impractical. It may be helpful to all who fail to recognize the soundness of these 6 steps to know that the information they convey was received from Andrew Carnegie, who began as an ordinary laborer in the steel mills, but managed to, despite his humble beginnings, to make these principles yield him a fortune of considerably more than $100 million, and that was at that time. It may be to further help you know that the 6 principles here recommended were actually carefully scrutinized by the late Thomas Edison, who placed his stamp of approval upon them as being not only the steps for the essential accumulation of money, but necessary for the attainment of any definite goal. Those who become money conscious ever accumulate great riches, okay, consistently. Money consciousness means that the mind has become so throughoutly saturated with the desire for money that one can see oneself already in possession of it. You may as well know right here that you can never have riches in great quantities unless you can work yourself into a white heat of desire for money and actually believe you will possess it. See, a lot of people have qualms surrounding money, and even I did for a large degree. And as a result of those qualms, I didn't attract it. But then I realized that I can create money by providing services that are needed and useful. And so thus, it's a noble thing to do. It's a purposeful thing to do, to create products, services, etc., that can serve people, that can improve people's lives, that can allow them to have a better experience for their families, that can keep their children in safety. You can create different products and services that can extend people's lives, that can cure issues that they're having in health, etc. And as a result of that value that you create, you will be rewarded with money. And that's the kind of focus we want to have. We want to realize that we're going to acquire money. And nowadays, you got cryptocurrency, you got all kinds of different forms of value. It doesn't necessarily have to be money. It could be barter or whatever. You can create that life by focusing on how much value you can create. And I've done many videos on value creation. In planning to acquire your share of riches, let no one influence you to scorn the dreamer. To win the big stakes in this changed world, you must catch the spirit of the great pioneers of the past, whose dreams have given to civilization all that it has of value, the spirit which serves as the lifeblood of our own country, your opportunity and mine, to develop and market our talents. Put your dream across and never mind what they say. If you meet with temporary defeat, for they perhaps do not know that every failure brings with it a seed of an equivalent success. Now, here's the thing. Maybe in earlier stages of the journey, you might not be surrounded with a lot of people that are in success consciousness. And you'll know that to be true when you recognize that every time you take action, you fail, they'll laugh at you or ridicule you or criticize you or whatever. The point is that it's discouraging. When you find yourself around success consciousness people, they look at the failures that you make as an opportunity for optimization. And you're able to share your failures with them, and they actually hold you to a higher standard because you actually take action. Like, I very much enjoy conversations with people who tell me how they fail and the amount of things they do to fail, not because they want to fail, but because they try more things, and as a result of trying more things, they fail. And that motivates me because I recognize something, that I could always play bigger. I'm always raising the bar. And if I'm not failing enough, then I'm probably not trying enough. And with every failure brings with it a seed of an equivalent success. Then if I want more success, then obviously I'll have to fail more. And, think about software, technology, whatever you want. The first version, and we talked about this in the last video, an opportunity, is never going to be up to the same standards as whoever else you're competing against. You're going to make a lot of mistakes in the first version of release of whatever you do. First video you make on YouTube, first product that you create that is out in the marketplace, some kind of service that you offer. But for every time you do and you take action and you put it out there, you're going to get lists and lists and lists of optimization ideas to improve upon that. And by improving upon that, you create more value for the client. Their client experience goes up. That's what they're talking about when we're and many other ways too, of the seeds of equivalent success. Remember, too, that all who succeed in life get off to a bad start and pass through many heartbreaking struggles before they arrive. The turning point in their lives of those who succeed usually comes at the moment of some crises through which they are introduced to their other selves. Okay, this is very interesting. One of the things that you will find in this journey, if you are evolving, let's say in entrepreneurship or going to high levels of results and success, is you learn to become your own best friend. You learn to seek advice from yourself. Because the more you create success, the higher level you rise to, a lot of times you'll find yourself being misunderstood. People won't get it. And you wouldn't be able to communicate a lot of the things, like, for example, the stuff we're talking about right here, to a lot of people because they just wouldn't understand it. Talking about vibration and all these things, they're going to think you're crazy. But it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter at all. We need our own approval. Okay? We're not looking for approval from the external world. We're not looking for validation from the external world in the sense that it has an impact on our self-esteem. We're looking for approval and validation from the market that we serve, the people that we serve, for optimization purposes, again, detached from the emotional self-esteem issue part, to be able to rework and reorganize and recreate and adjust to go out and optimize and address those issues, create more value. And when you do get approval, when people come up to you and say, you're the greatest for whatever you do, it's important to recognize that they're not really saying that you're the greatest because they want to stroke your ego. What they're saying is they really enjoy the value that you create for them. And then you know you're on the right track. And then that's an opportunity right there to go out and figure out how to multiply that value to more people or give them even more value. And you learn this by detaching your need for finding closure in other people. See, I'm a fan of Stephen R. Covey's work, and the one principle that stands out the most, maybe not the most, but it's one of the top ones, is the concept of dependence, independence, and interdependence. Most of us in our lives, myself included, come from a place of dependence. We're dependent on our families, we're dependent on our parents, we're dependent on society, we're dependent on friends, etc., in earlier stages as we're beginning to learn. Then we go through a phase of independence, usually because, we're burned, we things don't work out, might even get a little jaded, and we become very independent. And while we start to produce results, we recognize something, that we're missing out on a lot of opportunity by working with others. So we start working with others, and maybe it doesn't work out, and again, we go back to being independent. But when you come from a place of, look, I am independent in the sense that all the inefficient things that I expect others to fulfill in myself, I can actually fulfill in myself. Then you move on to another phase. It's called interdependence. And interdependence is essentially the mastermind, which we're going to talk about. This is where you connect with people for a win-win objective and you bring to the table the valuable skills, etc., that you have, and you're not looking for approval and validation to uplift your self-esteem or anything like that. You're looking for objective data that I mentioned earlier. And that's what he's talking about here. There's a difference between wishing for a thing and being ready to receive it. No one is ready for a thing unless he believes he can acquire it. The state of mind must be belief, not mere wish or hope. Open-mindedness is essential for belief. Closed minds do not inspire faith, courage, and belief. So again, going back to my last point, when a person's independent, they can become very closed off. Okay? They think that they're this island and they're just, while that might serve them to a high degree, they're still missing out on a lot of opportunity, provided, they want a really high level of success. Because you could kind of do it that way if you wanted to. But if you want to be a high achiever, open-mindedness is essential. And having a proper level of open-mindedness or understanding how to figure out what resonates and what doesn't is really a net result of wisdom. All right. So sometimes you might get negative information or negative ideas and so forth. And if you're closed-minded, hey, it's not going to impact you. If you're open-minded, it might impact you. But if you are open-minded from experience and wisdom, which comes through practice and implementing everything we're talking about, you're able to block that information from entering your subconscious mind while still being aware that it exists. So you're able to look at information and say, okay, that's what it means, but it's not going to create fear in me. Okay, think about this when you're watching the news or reading any kind of news publication. Their job is to sell advertising and so forth. So they're going to make the stories more emotional, and it's going to emotionally impact you if you are a person that allows that to emotionally impact you. And a lot of times that can emotionally impact you and trigger one of the fears that we have. And we'll talk about the fears, the 6 basic fears later. What we want to do is we want to look at the information and understand what's happening and recognize that, hey, it's going to trigger this kind of fears and so forth, but we can't let that happen. So that's what I mean by being open-minded, knowing what's out there, seeing how reality works, but at the same time not being influenced by it in a way that it steers you off course towards your goals. And that requires you to have faith and courage and belief that you can't be swayed outside of your definite chief aim. No matter what happens, whatever kind of stimulus, you will figure out a way of managing it from happening it again, from that same negative situation happening again, as you move towards your objective. Strange and imponderable is the power of the human mind. We do not understand the method by which it uses every circumstance, every individual, every physical thing within its reach as a means to transmute desire into its physical counterpart. Perhaps science will uncover the secret. Through some strange and powerful principle of mental chemistry, which she has never divulged, nature wraps up in the impulse of strong desire that something which recognizes no such word as impossible and accepts no such reality as failure. Before passing you to the next chapter, kindle anew in your mind the fire of hope, faith, courage, and tolerance. If you have these states of mind and a working knowledge of the principles described, all else that you read will come to you when you are ready for it. All right, let's move on now to faith, the 3rd chapter. Faith. Faith is the head chemist of the mind. When faith is blended with the vibration of thought, the subconscious mind instantly picks up the vibration, translates it into its spiritual equivalent, and transmits it to infinite intelligence, as in the case of prayer. So some of you might believe this and some might not believe it, but essentially the way it works is like this. Whatever thoughts you have in your mind programs your subconscious mind. Okay, you have a conscious mind and you have a subconscious mind. I did a video on power of the subconscious mind. I recommend that you study that. And your subconscious mind has within it all these stories and ways of looking at reality, essentially your paradigm and everything, that orients you either towards moving towards failure or success. It determines the actions you take, the behaviors that you have. A lot of us might find that we're trying to adopt a good habit, but there's a lot of resistance, a lot of inner resistance. Well, that inner resistance comes from your subconscious mind. And so what we need to do is we need to reprogram the subconscious mind. And the idea behind this statement here is that when the subconscious mind is programmed towards a place of abundance, removing fears, and purposeful, worthwhile goals to create value for others and enrich the person who is creating that value, that subconscious mind goes into a certain frequency that resonates with the infinite intelligence, otherwise known as the universal mind, which apparently he refers to as the ether as well, where ideas, hunches, and inspirations come from, the collective consciousness, and so forth. Again, spiritual texts talk about how we are actually all connected and that we can maintain the connection to this infinite intelligence. And so thus, what he's saying is that when a person keeps themselves in a pure state of mind, or a state of mind that is based on abundance and creating success and sees reality as an opportunity, they're able to tap into these higher faculties, and they're able to attract people and situations by sending information down to the infinite intelligence. Now, this, again, might sound very far out, but also think about something. There was a lot of things that today sound very normal and reasonable that maybe 500 years ago sounded weird, abstract, and impossible, and even if you were to mention it, would make you look like you were a crazy nut. For example, cell phone technology, wireless, etc. To be able to send messages to people via wireless signal, it seems so real now. We understand how it works. We know how it works. A lot of things that are misunderstood nowadays will be scientifically proven and understood, provided that there is basis on it, as we evolve as a species. And that was always the case in our evolution. Faith is a state of mind which may be induced or created by affirmation or repeated instruction to the subconscious mind through the principle of autosuggestion. Through the principles of autosuggestion, we can reprogram the subconscious mind. The subconscious mind is being programmed all the time. Every time you watch TV, every time you read a book, every time you talk to a person, every time you're awake, and even when you sleep, the subconscious mind is being programmed. The subconscious mind can be intentionally programmed, or we can allow chance and whatever else and influences to program our subconscious mind. If you know that you want to create success consciousness and you recognize that success consciousness is going to help you do the things that we have identified so far, then it would make sense to dedicate as much time to automate the success consciousness by reprogramming the subconscious mind. And the way we do it is through autosuggestion and ensuring that we consume the information that programs specifically, okay, like a computer programmer would, the kind of thoughts and ideas and feelings and behaviors that are required for success. Again, he talks about planning. Okay, planning. What are the specific elements and behaviors one needs to develop to create success? Where can you find those sources of information? And how do you learn and study and dedicate your time to grow and develop the skills so that you can produce the results through that planning? What are those things? And how do you program your subconscious mind so you will do those things? In connection with this, consider again the statement, all thoughts which have been emotionalized, given feeling, and mixed with faith begin immediately to translate themselves into their physical equivalent or counterpart. So all thoughts which have been emotionalized. Okay, so you can create a thought saying, well, I like this person or I dislike this person. But if there's a lot of emotion behind those thoughts, either or, it will probably spawn an action, okay, an action that you would take towards that person. If you have a thought towards creating wealth in your life, success as far as money goes in entrepreneurship, and you're emotionally charged with doing that, you're more likely to take the optimal actions rather than the procrastination actions or diluting and masquerading work as accomplishment. Your belief or faith is the element which determines the actions of your subconscious mind. Your belief or faith is the element which determines the actions of your subconscious mind. The subconscious mind will transmute into its physical equivalent by the most direct and practical media available by any order which is given to in a state of faith or belief that the order will be carried out. Any order which is given to it, I should say, in a state of faith and belief that the order will be carried out. A mind dominated by positive emotions becomes a favorable abode for the state of mind known as faith. A mind so dominated at will give the subconscious mind instructions which it will accept and act upon immediately. The foregoing sentence is worth reading a second time, a third, a fourth, and it's worth reading aloud. Faith is the starting point of all accumulation of riches. Faith is the basis of all miracles and all mysteries which cannot be analyzed by the rules of science. Faith is the only known antidote for failure. Faith is the element, the chemical, when mixed with prayer, gives one direct communication with infinite intelligence. Faith is the element which transforms the ordinary vibration of thought created by the finite mind of man into the spiritual equivalent. Faith is the only agency through which the cosmic force of infinite intelligence can be harnessed and used by man. Every man is what he is because of his dominating thoughts, which he permits to occupy his mind. Thoughts which a man deliberately places in his own mind and encourages with sympathy, and which he mixes any one or more of the emotions, constitute the motivating forces which direct and control every movement, act, and deed. So self-confidence is one of those important areas we need to work on if we want to really have mastery on faith, because we've already identified that faith is going to allow us to tap into abilities that we might not understand, but can move us forward towards our goal. And having confidence, self-confidence, allows us to do this and allows us to recalibrate if we ever get taken off course. So this is what he has included in here, which is his self-confidence formula. Number 1, I know that I have the ability to achieve the object of my definite purpose in life. Therefore, I demand of myself persistent, continuous action towards its attainment, and I here and now promise to render such action. These are affirmations. I realize that dominating thoughts of my mind will eventually reproduce themselves in outward physical action and gradually transform themselves into physical reality. Therefore, I will concentrate my thoughts for 30 minutes daily upon the task of thinking of the person I intend to become, thereby creating in my mind a clear mental picture of that person. And this is very related to Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and I did a video on that. I recommend you watch it. Who we are is largely going to be determined by our self-image, and there's a lot of information in that book about that. I know through the principle of autosuggestion, any desire that I persistently hold in my mind will eventually seek expression through some practical means of attaining the object back to it. Therefore, I will devote 10 minutes daily to demanding of myself the development of self-confidence. I have clearly written down a description of my definite chief aim in life, and I will never stop trying until I shall have developed sufficient self-confidence of its attainment, for its attainment. Number 5, I will fully realize that no wealth or position can long endure unless built upon truth and justice. Therefore, I will engage in no transaction which does not benefit all whom it affects. I will succeed by attracting to myself the forces I wish to use and the cooperation of other people. I will induce others to serve me because of my willingness to serve others. I will eliminate hatred, envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity. Because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success, I will cause others to believe in me because I will believe in them and in myself. So the idea behind this is that if you believe reality to work this way, you will be able to tap into more abilities to produce the results. Now, will these abilities come from infinite intelligence? Will it come from as a result of navigating reality a certain way and projecting a certain vibe in which others pick up on and then choose to work with you based on that? It could come from a wide array of these sources, but the important thing is that we have to recognize that a lot of what we might have considered as far as success goes might have been programmed in our mind to say that in order to get success, you have to take advantage of others. You have to cause others to lose. You have to essentially create pain and suffering and so forth. This is absolutely not true. We are seeing this more and more nowadays. Tons of businesses and opportunities have sprung up, which arguably were always there, to create wealth and abundance. And a lot of people are able to execute upon it every day, that are opportunities that create real concrete value, in which people get paid really well, which actually enriches the lives and people and the various elements such as environment and so forth as a net result of that product and service. And what you'll find is that if you align yourself with opportunities like that, you'll notice that in this day we live in right now, you'll get more and more people attracted to your cause. More will want to contribute to your cause. More people might even want to fund your cause, partner with you, and so forth. And it's easier to hit your goals and objectives if you keep all these things into consideration. I will sign my name to this formula, commit it to memory, and repeat it aloud once a day, with full faith that it will gradually influence my thoughts and actions so that I will become a self-reliant and successful person. Now, why would you want to affirm this every day? Well, when we say stuff like, I will eliminate hatred and envy, jealousy, selfishness, and cynicism by developing love for all humanity because I know that a negative attitude towards others can never bring me success, it seems obvious when we say it. Most of us will say, yep, that's true. But what we'll find is that our subconscious mind has been programmed by information that says otherwise. It's there. It's not really our fault. It was there. Programming was there for whatever reason. And as a result of it, this behaviors and actions start to manifest. And we might end up doing things that are based and oriented from those perspectives. By constant autosuggestion and affirmation, we're able to rewrite that programming. And if we manifest any of those behaviors or thoughts, we recognize that we'll create in our reality the equivalent of that which is going to take us away from the kind of success we want to create. And so thus we go to work on those areas. Okay? We become self-aware. This is what people talk about when they say self-aware. When you're self-aware and you experience something because you're dealing with somebody and you want to have envy or hatred or anything that's negative towards that person, you recognize within yourself where you're doing that also, and that you're projecting it onto them. And that if you overcome that, you won't have that experience again. He talks about this in As a Man Thinketh. Now, I believe there's somewhere on YouTube, and I'll find it, put an audio in a link in the description because the book is in public domain now. Listening to the audio of As a Man Thinketh over and over again, because contained within it are many of the granular elements that are related to this audio and this book, which will help you further understand how you are the cause and creator of circumstances and situations in your life when you adopt this philosophy that you might not have thought you were the cause and creator of. And thus now with the newfound understanding and awareness, you can rewrite the programming and the meaning and come from a better place of contribution to create real lasting success, which is based on the formula that we're talking about. The subconscious mind, the chemical laboratory in which all thoughts, impulses are combined and made ready for translation into physical reality, makes no distinction between constructive and destructive thought impulses. It works with the material we feed it through our thought impulses. The subconscious mind will translate into reality a thought driven by fear just as readily as it will translate into reality a thought driven by courage or faith. So the subconscious mind, interesting, we have a conscious mind and a subconscious mind. With our subconscious mind, we can say all kinds of things and it'll be altruistic and it'll sound right, it'll be well polished, etc. But if the subconscious mind has been programmed with opposing ideas and belief systems, you get internal turmoil, internal friction, etc. So we want to become clear. A lot of people talk about becoming clear. Okay, this is like a goal for a lot of people. They want to become clear. Well, in order to become clear, the subconscious mind has to be aligned with the conscious mind. Okay, so we go through a journey of essentially clearing nonsense that we've had put into our subconscious mind, either through intentionally doing it or through consuming information in our environment and people and so forth, which Obviously, nowadays, there's more information available bombarding your mind than you can ever imagine. So we have to be even more aware of how this information goes in and programs our subconscious mind. And the subconscious mind does not know the difference between what is right and what is wrong. It does not know the difference. And this is one of the reasons why we've got to become more compassionate towards people, because when somebody does something wrong, we have to understand that there could be a possibility that intentionally, consciously, they're not thinking about doing that thing. Their subconscious is reacting based on something that happened that causes them to act that way. When you recognize this, then you can really work with people to a higher degree. You can have more compassion and understanding, which will allow you to really embrace difficult conversations, which will help you in business, etc. But likewise, we have to look at what's happening in our subconscious mind, because our subconscious mind doesn't know what's right and wrong, and it just acts based on the information that is presented to it. That's why movies, books, audios, music, whatever you listen to, as innocent as it may seem on the surface, we got to pay attention to the words being projected in there and recognizing that the subconscious mind will accept as fact the information that's being presented in there. If you fill your mind with fear, doubt, and unbelief in your ability to connect with and use the forces of infinite intelligence, the law of autosuggestion will take the spirit of unbelief and use it as a pattern by which your subconscious mind will translate it into its physical equivalent. Anything that you desire, if you mix it with fear, will go into your subconscious mind and bring about the experiences, circumstances, situations, actions, etc. that is kind of getting you in the direction of what you want, but because you mixed it with fear, it's actually bringing about the fearful elements as well. So this is another reason why we want purity. It is a known fact that the emotion of love is closely akin to the state of mind known as faith, and this for the reason that love comes very near to translating one's thoughts, impulses into their spiritual equivalent. And this is why they talk about unconditional love. Okay, Gandhi was really big on unconditional love, and a lot of the spiritual leaders talk about unconditional love. And it takes a lot of confidence and a lot of presence to calibrate yourself to a place of unconditional love, especially in the world of business. But if you can do that, then you'll understand a very important truth, and that is that if you are coming from a place of unconditional love, what you've got reflected back to you is unconditional love. If you come from a place of conditional love, what you get reflected back to you is conditional love. Now, this might not be absolute, as in sometimes you will project unconditional love and you might be met with some kind of wall or resistance from another person, but it could just be a test to help you determine the level of unconditional love that you have. And essentially, there's only one level. You can say unconditional, but it's really testing to see if you yourself, if you are having unconditional love. Now, why would you want this? Well, because if you have love for what you do and you have a desire to create the results and you have a desire to help others and produce wealth and so forth as a result of it, and you inject all of those autosuggestions and everything you do with love, then that goes into your subconscious mind, and your subconscious mind operates you from that place of love rather than the place of fear. Riches begin in the form of thought. The amount is limited only by the person in whose mind the thought is put into motion. Faith removes limitations. Remember this when you are ready to bargain with life for whatever it is you want. Ask as your price for having passed this way. So let's talk about autosuggestion. Chapter 4. Autosuggestion is a term which applies to all suggestions and all self-administrated stimuli which reach one's mind through the five senses. Stated another way, autosuggestion is self-suggestion. It is the agency of communication between that part of the mind where conscious thought takes place and that which serves as a seat of action for the subconscious mind. Nature has so built man that he has absolute control over the material which reaches his subconscious mind through his five senses, although this is not meant to be constructed as a statement that man always exercises this control. In the great majority of instances, he does not exercise it, which explains why so many people go through life in poverty. So we have to look at this and say, we're being programmed And we were always programmed through the external stimulus and the material and the information that we've been consuming. And now we're at a point where we got to say, okay, let's take inventory of what is programming us right now. And let's make a decision that we're going to surround ourselves with information, people, circumstances, etc., that is going to reprogram our subconscious mind to that of success. We know what we want to create. It's a definite plan and a definite purpose to get there. Okay, we've got specific numbers of what we want to create as far as wealth. And this could work for any area of your life. Then we create a plan, and it could be a rough plan. And now, what are the skills? What's the specialized knowledge? We'll talk about that in a moment. And what kind of information do we need to consume to program our subconscious mind so we move in that direction, take action in that direction as fast as possible? And what kind of information are we consuming right now that prevents us from doing it? Okay, where are these sources of information? Is it coming from the videos we watch? Is it coming from the music we listen to, the people that we associate? Where are these sources of information? And how can we reduce and if not eliminate these sources of information as we reprogram our subconscious mind to do what we need to do to produce the results? If we do this, you get less resistance, you have more joy, there's less friction in your mind, and you're able to operate with clarity, and you're able to even communicate with clarity. Recall what has been said about the subconscious mind, resembling a fertile grass or garden spot in which weeds will grow in abundance if the seeds of more desirable crops are not sown therein. Autosuggestion is the agency of control through which an individual may voluntarily feed his subconscious mind, on thoughts of creative nature, or by neglect permit thoughts of a destructive nature to find their way into his rich garden of the mind. And Earl Nightingale talked about this in The Strangest Secret. The things that we get in life that are really valuable, we take for granted because a lot of times they're free. Now we're talking about creating wealth and so forth so we can go out and do what we want to do and live the life we want to live and contribute and so forth. That's why we need the money or whatever form of wealth. But what's actually valuable is not the things that the money can buy, but what you already have for free: your mind, your health, your well-being, the opportunities that you have right now, the different learning experiences that you're going through right now, whether they're comfortable or not. All of this is priceless. And as a result of working with this, we can create wealth. That's the interesting thing about life, is you're given a mind. And with this mind, you can cultivate it like a garden. You can plant empowering information in there. You could do empowering things. You can consume empowering information to program yourself to do, act, and think in a certain way. How you think is going to determine the actions you take. The actions you take produces your result. Do not become discouraged if you cannot control and direct your emotions the first time you try to do so. We're also talking about emotions here. Think about something, and then you feel a certain way. Remember that. You think about an empowering thought, you start to feel uplifted. Your vibration goes up. You could say the emotions are the vibrations. And a lot of us try to control our emotions, change the way you think, change what you look at, change the kind of information you consume, change your experiences, your environment, those you associate with, and your emotions start to reveal to you if you're on the right track or not. If you start to feel good, that means your emotions are telling you that you're doing the right thing. If you're feeling discouraged, negative, or any kind of scarcity or whatnot, it just doesn't feel right, you're probably not in the right place and time. Or you're probably not doing the thing that you really should be doing. And you can control your emotions by being more self-aware. And we have to recognize that there's different stimulus that make us feel a certain way, certain kinds of information, etc., and our thoughts, okay, what we think about. And so when you try to do this, the first few times it'd be kind of hard to do it, but you get better at it. Remember, there's no such thing as possibility as something for nothing. Ability to reach and influence your subconscious mind has its price. You must pay that price. You cannot cheat, even if you desire to do so. The price of ability to influence your subconscious mind is everlasting persistence in applying the principles described here. You cannot develop the desire ability for a lower price. You and you alone must decide whether or not the reward for which you are striving for, whatever it is worth the price you must pay for it in effort. And what I found, and this is true for myself, is that if I place myself in as much environments, situations, circumstances, surrounding myself with certain information that programs my mind to a place of empowerment, okay, that makes me feel a certain way, that uplifts my vibe, my emotions, my vibration, everything I do starts to be performed better. Okay, the videos that I make, content I create, the consulting that I do, the works that I do, the different kinds of businesses and everything that I'm involved with, I'm able to do it easier, more fun, with more effort, and I don't take it seriously. Okay, I laugh at a lot of things because it makes me happy. And that came as a result of placing myself in those environments. Now, the cool thing is then it's easier to stay in that environment, and it's easier to catch myself when I'm drifting into a different direction. Another good book to read by Napoleon Hill is Outwitting the Devil. I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. Your ability to use the principle of autosuggestion will depend very largely upon your capacity to concentrate upon a given desire until that desire becomes a burning obsession. Here's the most significant fact. The subconscious mind takes any orders given in it in a spirit of absolute faith and acts upon these orders through the orders, although the orders often have to be presented over and over again through repetition before they're interpreted by the subconscious mind. So hearing it once, hearing it twice is not going to help you. Experiencing it once, experiencing twice, it could be very traumatic or very impactful. It could program the subconscious mind. But the repetition is what's really going to make the biggest difference. And that's why we read books like this over and over again. And that's why there's certain audios that we listen to over and over again, like The Strangest Secret and As a Man Thinketh. Because the repetition programs the subconscious mind to believe the information as absolute fact. And you orient yourself based on those facts that your subconscious mind has accepted as fact with faith. Do not wait for a definite plan, through which you intend to exchange services or merchandise in return for the money you are visualizing. But begin at once to see yourself in possession of the money, demanding and expecting meanwhile that your subconscious mind will hand over the plan or plans you need. Be on alert for these plans, and when they appear, put them into action immediately. So when you place yourself in success consciousness and you do the things we're talking about, and you are in this higher vibration of feeling and success consciousness, you'll notice that you'll get better ideas, clearer ideas based on abundance, creating value, everything we talked about, rather than scarcity. And you're going to want to put those ideas into action immediately. And when you're in a higher state of consciousness, you're more likely to take action because you're not operating from a place of fear. When visualizing the money you intend to accumulate with closed eyes, see yourself rendering the service or delivering the merchandise you intend to give in return for this money. It is important. If you choose to follow some of the instructions but neglect or refuse to follow others, you will fail. To get satisfactory results, you must follow all the instructions in a spirit of faith. The instructions given in connection with the 6 steps in the second chapter will now be summarized and blended with the principles covered in this chapter as follows. Number 1, go into a quiet spot, preferably in bed at night, where you will not be disturbed or interrupted. Close your eyes and repeat out loud, so you may hear your own words, the written statement of the amount of money you intend to accumulate, the time limit for its accumulation, and a description of the service or merchandise you intend to give in return for the money. As you carry out these instructions, see yourself already in possession of the money. Number 2, repeat this program night and morning until you can see in your imagination the money you intend to accumulate. Number 3, place a written copy of your statement where you can see it at night and in morning and read it just before retiring and upon rising until it has been memorized. These instructions may at first seem abstract. Do not let them disturb you. Do not let this disturb you. Follow the instructions no matter how abstract or impractical they may appear to be. The time will come soon if you do as you have been instructed in spirit as well as in act, when a whole new universe of power will unfold to you. Remember, skepticism in connection with all new ideas is characteristic of all human beings. Okay? But if you follow the instructions outlined, your skepticism will soon be replaced by belief, and this in turn will soon become crystallized into absolute faith. So this is very interesting. Skepticism will be replaced by belief, and this in turn will soon become crystallized, okay, wired into your neurology, into absolute faith. Then you will have arrived at the point where you may truly say, I am the master of my faith, I am the capital of my soul. So think about all the ideas and disempowering ways of navigating reality that we have embedded in our brain that we assume is absolute faith and fact of how reality works. Understand that we can go in there and rewrite this programming. And in the earlier stages, it's normal to feel the skepticism and doubt. But the repetition and following this to the T and supporting information and consuming, validating information and whatever else to further emphasize these important points will turn that skepticism into absolute faith, which is what we're looking for. Chapter 5, Specialized Knowledge. There are two kinds of knowledge. One is general and the other is specialized. General knowledge, no matter how great in quantity or variety it may be, is of but little use in the accumulation of money. The faculties of the great universities possess in the aggregate practically every form of general knowledge known to civilization. Most of the professors have but little or no money. They specialize on teaching knowledge, but they do not specialize on the organization or the use of knowledge. So this is not to say that school doesn't have a place and that university is not important and so forth. It's very important. You learn how to learn, you learn how to do projects, you learn a lot of valuable information that can help you. But as you leave school, recognize that whatever profession that you choose to get into, you're going to have to adopt the belief that lifelong learning is the way to go. And that means that technology and skills and everything is evolving so fast that you're going to have to constantly be learning and getting better at understanding and taking action on the information to get even more specific, built on the foundation that you learned on school. And then this is going to translate into very specific expertise, which is going to allow you to command the higher fees if you get paid by fee. Or it's going to allow you to see the connects to be able to create the products or services if you want to be an entrepreneur. Lifelong learning is the way to be. Okay, you have to dedicate your entire life to learning and recognize that it never ends. And the interesting thing is that human beings are designed to be that way. Our brain works that way. We want to learn. We want to grow. So no matter what area you specialize in school, you can always develop that skill and improve in that skill so that you can create more value. And as a result of the value you create, you will be able to attract more money. You'll be able to create more wealth in your life. And I also recommend learning entrepreneurship and business building skills and also learning how to learn, okay? Improving your ability to learn it at an accelerated pace. Because again, then, which allows you to broaden the opportunities that you have. You might be able to take your very specialized knowledge in which you would work for a company and then learn business building skills and entrepreneurship skills and be able to go out and actually build a business of your own, either full-time or on the side. Which again, as you do that, will require more knowledge and learning, which is very, very good because it'll keep you stimulated, it'll keep you motivated, and it will keep your mind occupied with things that are worthwhile rather than information that is going to disempower you, that's going to cause you to complain and drift into different directions where you feel disempowered. Knowledge will not attract money unless it is organized and intelligently directed through practical plans of action to the definite end of accumulation of money. So knowledge alone won't attract the money unless it is organized. And so if you have knowledge, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're going to make a lot of money because you still have to learn how to communicate your value. You have to help others see how what you have to offer is valuable to them. They might not see it. You have to learn how to sell yourself, sell the ideas, market yourself, market the ideas. You got to learn how to manage yourself, manage others. You got to learn how to be more productive, organized, etc. There's tons of things that need to be learned that complement the specialized knowledge that you have, which will translate into increased likelihood of getting money. And then having plans of action for developing those abilities and putting them into action. Okay, that's what we have to do. Before you can be sure of your ability to transmute desire into its monetary equivalent, you will require specialized knowledge of the service, merchandise, or profession in which you intend to offer in return for fortune. And this could be through actual experience. You go through experiences in life and you learn specialized knowledge. I recommend 80% learning and 80% action taking and actually doing, and 20% learning. For example, 80% working in a company or an organization or in a business that develops that specialized skill while supplementing that with some programs, some books, some education that allows you to further develop that specialized knowledge that you're actually taking action on and applying. I don't like it the other way around. A lot of people do that, where they just spend their time learning and studying, but they're not actually applying what they learn. And as a result, they don't learn the nuances and the specific applications that are required, which you're going to eventually learn how to have to learn, and they're going to have to get to a certain level of mastery on before they command the fees that they want. The accumulation of great fortunes calls for power, and power is acquired through highly organized and intelligently directed specialized knowledge. But that knowledge does not necessarily have to be in the possession of a man who accumulates the fortune. See, Henry Ford used to surround himself with people who had the specialized knowledge. And that's why leadership skills are very important. Your ability to connect with people are so important. Because you might have a certain level of knowledge as far as sales or business building goes, marketing. But if you surround yourself with those that are very knowledgeable to maybe do the technical skills, and you're able to get them to work together in a very collaborative way, you could focus on the sales and bring in the money to be able to pay them really well and cultivate their skills to invest in them. That's a good way of doing it. The person who stops studying merely because he has finished school is forever hopelessly doomed to mediocrity, no matter what may be his calling. The way of success is the way of continuous pursuit of knowledge. So if you're done school, you got to continue the pursuit of knowledge if you want high levels of success. If you don't do it, others that are in that profession, in that trade, in that area of expertise are doing it, and they're growing and they're getting more knowledgeable, and their value is increasing because of their abilities. And so thus we must do it. And it's actually better to do it. We actually want to do it. Our brain is set up in a way that we want to do it. And by not doing it, we cause ourselves to become lazy. We cause ourselves to drift into areas that aren't beneficial for us. So thus it's important to recognize that lifelong learning is something that is part of just normal living. Number 6, chapter 6, imagination. The imagination is literally the workshop wherein are fashioned all plans created by men. The impulse, the desire, is given shape, form, and action through the aid of the imaginative faculty of the mind. Man's only limitation within reason lies in his development and use of his imagination. He has not yet reached the apex of development in the use of his imagination faculty. He has merely discovered that he has an imagination and has commenced to use it in a very elementary way. So he talks about two forms of imagination, synthetic and creative. Let's discuss these. Through this faculty, talking about synthetic now, one may arrange old concepts, ideas, or plans into new combinations. This faculty creates nothing. It merely works with the material of experience, education, and observation with which it is fed. It is a faculty used most by the inventor, with the exception of the who draws upon the creative imagination, when he cannot solve the problem through synthetic imagination. Creative imagination, on the other hand, is through the faculty of creative imagination, the finite mind of man has direct communication with infinite intelligence. It is the faculty through which hunches and inspirations are received. It is by this faculty that all basic or new ideas are handed over to man. It is through this faculty that thought vibrations from the minds of others are received. It is through this faculty that one individual may tune in or communicate with the subconscious mind of other men. The creative imagination works automatically. in the manner described in the subsequent pages. This faculty functions only when the conscious mind is vibrating at an exceedingly rapid rate, as for example, when the conscious mind is stimulated through the emotion of a strong desire. So what we want to do is we want to keep ourselves in the success consciousness, and we want to keep raising it up. And the higher we raise it up, the more we tap into the abilities to get these hunches and inspirations which come from the creative imagination. And it's also important that we recognize that synthetic imagination is useful and valuable, but real massive breakthroughs in technology and whatever else, breakthroughs in human development, human existence, come from incorporating the creative imagination. If you are one of those who believe that hard work and honesty alone will bring riches, perish the thought. It is not true. Riches, when they come in huge quantities, are never the result of hard work. Riches come, if they come at all, in response to definite demands based upon the application of definite principles and not by luck or chance. Generally speaking, an idea is an impulse of thought that impels action by an appeal to the imagination. All master salesmen know that ideas can be sold, whereas merchandise cannot. Ordinary salesmen do not know this, and this is why they're ordinary. There's a concept called perceived value. And perceived value can be interpreted as kind of lying, but that's not what I'm talking about here. Think of Apple. Think of different products and services that command a higher fee, and as a result have created rich organization and people and companies. Think of technology. Think of certain kinds of software, websites, etc., that really are nothing, okay, just a bunch of code and whatnot, organized in a certain way, yes, to create something that wasn't there before that we now perceive as value. Think about that. And a lot of times these companies come up from nowhere, and they do this in a very rapid way. Part of it is because they're tapping into this ability. Part of it is that they're doing what we're talking about right here. It's not necessarily a result of hard work. A lot of these platforms and businesses were created as a result of a passion project. And I mentioned passion project in the last video, if you haven't seen it, the opportunity video by Eben Pagan. And it doesn't seem like hard work. Yeah, they're doing stuff, but it almost seems fun, and it's like a game. It's like something that they do, that they enjoy doing, and it brings them a lot of riches. Organized planning. If the first plan in which you adopt does not work successfully, replace it with a new plan. If this new plan fails to work, replace it in turn with still another, and so on, until you find a plan which does work. Right here is the point at which the majority of men meet with failure, because of their lack of persistence in creating new plans to take the place of those which fail. So we have to have persistence, and we have to do it with organized planning. The actions we take might not necessarily produce the results that we want, but it will give us objective data, will give us insights, will give us perspectives. And we take that information and we go back and we revisit our plan. And we do this with repetition over and over again until we start getting success. And I mentioned this earlier, a lot of times the success that we get is not necessarily how we think it's going to be, but it's going to be an evolution, a spawn, or some kind of thing. That is going to be a net result of the actions we take. But if we don't do this, we'll never even get to the possibility of success happening. Temporary defeat should mean only one thing: the certain knowledge that there is something wrong with your plan. Millions of men go through life in misery and poverty because they lack the sound plan through which to accumulate a fortune. Broadly speaking, there are two types of people in the world. One type is known as leaders and the other as followers. Decide at the outset whether you intend to become a leader in your chosen calling or remain a follower. The difference in compensation is vast. A follower cannot reasonably expect the compensation to which a leader is entitled, although many followers make the mistake of expecting such pay. So it's not a disgrace to be a follower. On the other hand, it is no credit to remain a follower. Most great leaders begin in the capacity of followers. They become great leaders because they were intelligent followers. With the exceptions, the man who cannot follow a leader intelligently cannot become an efficient leader. A man who can follow a leader most efficiently is usually the man who developed into leadership most rapidly. An intelligent follower has many advantages, among them the opportunity to acquire knowledge from his leader. So it's earlier stages of life, earlier stages of your journey, in whatever area of your choice, you're going to have to surround yourself with people that have a certain level of expertise. And they're going to be your leaders. And as a result of it, you're going to have to take advantage of the situation. It is an opportunity to learn and grow and understand what you don't know, and even what you don't know that you don't know. And a lot of people make the mistake and think that it's going to work out the way they think it's going to work in their head, and they're going to learn it according to how they think they're going to learn. But if they knew what it was, they would probably get the results already. So they have to learn how to trust a leader. They have to look at a leader who has the results, who's also a good teacher, who's also a good mentor, and learn to trust that relationship and to recognize that they might not actually be getting the information the way they want it, but they got to get better at learning. And that's why I'm a huge fan of learning how to learn. In my mind mapping program, I talk a lot about that. Learning how to teach and learning how to learn. If you want to become a good teacher, become a good student. If you want to become a good student, become a good teacher. Learn teaching models and learn how we learn, the different kinds of models related to that. When you do that, you become a good follower and you learn and you grow into the stage where you will eventually become the leader. And a good book to read is Mastery by Robert Greene. The following are important factors of leadership. Number 1, unwavering courage based on knowledge of self and one's occupation. No follower wishes to be dominated by a leader who lacks self-confidence and courage. No intelligent follower will be dominated by such a leader very long. So developing leadership skills is one of the most important things that we could do if we want to command a higher fee or if we want to create more wealth in our lives. We have to learn how to lead ourselves. We have to learn how to lead others. And thus, there's emphasis put on it in this book. And so these points over here are going to help you become a better leader. Another good book to read is The 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership, and I did a video on that. I'll put a link in the description. Number 2, self-control. The man who cannot control himself can never control others. Self-control sets a mighty example for one's followers, which the mere intelligent will emulate. Number 3, a keen sense of justice. Without a sense of fairness and justice, no leader can command and retain the respect of his followers. Definiteness of decision. A man who wavers in his decisions shows that he is not sure of himself. He cannot lead others successfully. Definiteness of plan. The successful leader must plan his work and work his plan. The leader who moves by guesswork without practical, definite plans is comparable to a ship without a rudder. Sooner or later, he will land on the rocks. The habit of doing more than paid for. One of the penalties of leadership is the necessity of willingness upon the part of the leader to do more than he requires of his followers. And we do this because we're setting an example. And people are looking at us and saying, well, this person is a leader. They're teaching us. What are they doing? And the further you stretch yourself as a leader to grow, the more you're going to motivate your followers, your staff, whoever within your awareness to do the same. A pleasing personality. A careless person can't become a successful leader. Leadership calls for respect. Followers will not respect a leader who does not grade high on all the factors of a pleasing personality. Sympathy and understanding. The successful leader must be in sympathy with his followers. Moreover, he must understand them and their problems. Mastery of details. Successful leadership calls for mastery of details of the leader's position. Willingness to assume full responsibility. The successful leader must be willing to assume responsibility for the mistakes and shortcomings of his followers. If he tries to shift this responsibility, he will not remain the leader. If one of his followers makes a mistake and shows himself incompetent, the leader must consider that it is he who failed. So I'm a huge fan of the concept of cybernetic loop, and that is this. The student is the teacher, and the teacher is the student. And that if the student fails, the teacher actually fails. In most teaching environments, this is not looked upon this way because it takes an enormous amount of responsibility and confidence for the teacher to assume full responsibility like that for the student. Now, granted, there are probably going to be some students that might have some issues learning the thing, or it's not necessarily what they want to learn. But a good teacher knows how to find the right students also, and knows how to communicate so that the students experience a behavioral change, not just theoretical understanding, especially with this kind of information. The goal here is not to just be very conceptual of this understanding of this information. It's to actually have wisdom and knowledge and experience, which comes as a result of doing. So it's the teacher's responsibility to ensure that the student experience a behavioral change that produces results. And the results could be of a small degree or high degree. But it should be at a higher degree than when the student was introduced to the teacher and the material that they're going through and so forth. And then the teacher should be looking onto how to multiply that by learning, oftentimes real time. And that's why coaching, kind of mentorship arrangements can be really powerful, because in the dynamic of the present, and if they're very good at doing it, a coach or a mentor is really good at doing it, they can train and learn a student's ability to learn or the lack of ability using various learning models that they've experienced and studied. And there's tons of them you could learn, and know which one to apply in the current scenario when they're having that session with the student. Cooperation. A successful leader must understand and apply the principles of cooperative effort and be able to introduce his followers to do the same. Leadership calls for power, and power calls for cooperation. So those of you who are watching this video who might not necessarily want to become entrepreneurs might consider getting a different position or a different job or a raise. There was some information that was in the book that speaks to this objective, and I want to share this. How to get the exact position you desire. Number one, decide exactly what kind of job you want. If the job doesn't already exist, perhaps you can create it. Number two, choose the company or individual from whom you wish to work. Number three, study your prospective employer as to policies, personnel, and chances of advancement. Number four, by analysis of yourself, your talents and capabilities, figure what you can offer and plan ways and means of giving advantages, services, developments, and ideas that you believe you can successfully deliver. Number five, forget about a job. Forget about whether or not there is an opening. Forget the usual routine of you've got a job for me, and concentrate on what you can give. Number six, once you have a plan in mind, arrange with an experienced writer to put it on paper in neat form and in full detail. Number seven, present it to the proper person with authority, and he will do the rest. Every company is looking for men who can give something of value, whether it be ideas, services, or connections. Now, this is not to be taken literally 100%, write it on a piece of paper. I recommend it depends on the context. If you want to get a job in a company, communicating what it is that you can offer is very important as far as what's valuable to them. And essentially getting your foot in the door to just have a conversation in which, you can bring this document in which you can share the information in there. But actually going into an environment, not looking for a job or what's there to fill, but connecting with people and demonstrating the kind of value that you have through the communication, even showing examples of what you've done, can a lot of times create positions for you. So rather than going in and handing in resumes and things like that, I actually recommend connecting with influential people or people in the industry that make decisions on hiring, and figure out what it is that they're looking for and what they see as value, and learn how to create and develop the skills necessary to deliver upon that value and even add to that value and show that they might even consider, as an exception, creating a position which incorporates you. Remember the QQS formula, but do more. Apply it as a habit. So number one, quality of service shall be constructed to mean the performance of every detail in connection with your position in the most efficient manner possible, with the object of greater efficiency always in mind. Quantity, number two, of service shall be soon understood to mean the habit of rendering all the service of which you are capable at all times, with the purpose of increasing the amount of service rendered as greater skill is developed through practice and experience. Emphasis is again placed on the word habit. And number three, spirit of service shall be construed to mean the habit of agreeable, harmonious conduct which will induce cooperation from associates and fellow employees. So millions of men and women throughout the nation still engaged with this popular pastime of getting without giving. It's important to understand that we have to give first. We have to learn how to give value first if we want to really produce the results. That's why, going back to the auto-suggestion, we state what exactly it is we are going to give for this money that we desire. See, that's an exercise that goes beyond what a lot of people think about. They just think about, okay, this is how much money I want to make, and so forth. They never stretch themselves based on how reality works, that in order to get that money, they have to provide value, and they have to map out and understand what value is to the market that they serve. Value means to whoever it is that they're trying to get a job with, and so forth, to earn that kind of money. And they're never looking at how they can communicate that first. A lot of times they make the mistake and they say, here's what you should find valuable. Now, I get this a lot. I get some people that they just give me advice, and they think that the advice that they give me, I consider it to be valuable. And sometimes I don't implement this advice. Actually, a lot of times I don't. And they might just think, oh, well, I'm just being lazy or whatever, but they don't understand that there's different priorities and different areas that I'm interested in currently, and there's a lot of dynamics in play. And perhaps if they were to give me some advice or some kind of concrete way for me to focus on that particular area that I'm interested in and produce results, I would be more likely to do a business deal with them, etc. The fact that they don't communicate that to me is an indicator that they're not very good at understanding the needs and desires of a prospect and so forth, and they probably wouldn't be the best person to work with. And so we don't want to do that. And this is usually something we do in the beginning stages of our career because we don't really understand this. This is not something they teach very formally, but it's one of the most valuable skills. And the skill is to figure out what is valuable to the other person. If something is really valuable to the other person, a lot of times they'll buy it. And getting good at figuring out what is valuable for the other person requires a certain level of care and self-esteem and selflessness, making it about the other person. And if you can figure out what it is that they consider value and deliver upon that first in some shape or form, give that value away for free, they're more likely to do business with you, hire you, and reciprocate that value. And what you'll find is if they don't reciprocate that value, somewhere, somehow, that money or that value will be reciprocated back to you. There's but one dependable method for accumulating and legally holding on to riches, and that is by rendering useful service. Again, not service, not what you think is service and what you think is valuable, but useful service. And useful is based on what the market or what they see as useful. Number 8, decisions. Analysis of several hundred people who had accumulated fortunes well beyond the $1 million mark disclosed the fact that every one of them had the ability of reaching decisions promptly and of changing these decisions slowly. If and when they were changed, people who fail to accumulate money, without exception, have the habit of reaching decisions, if at all, very slowly and of changing these decisions quickly and often. So this is very interesting. Speed of implementation. So one of the things that I learned from Eben Pagan is probably the biggest thing I've ever learned from Eben, among the many things, is speed of implementation. Speed of implementation is as soon as you get an idea, you act upon it right away. You're not trying to be perfect. You realize that, hey, you're going to take action on this. It's probably not going to be perfect, but if you wait till it's perfect, it's actually never going to happen, because the only way to perfect something is to take action and see how the market or whatever responds to it and optimize and keep optimizing by taking action until you hit a certain level of what you call perfection. You can't come up with perfection unless you take action and see. So my biggest litmus test for myself on how much I want to do something, how much I want to grow, and my ability to generate the results is how fast I take action and create. And I recognize that I can always make it better, but my key priority is to take action as fast as possible. Procrastination is the opposite of decision, is a common enemy which practically every man must conquer. Okay, procrastination lowers our self-esteem, it lowers our self-confidence, it wastes time, and it does not demonstrate faith and a burning desire. It's a sign of lack of faith and lack of burning desire. So we have to train ourselves to be able to make decisions quickly. The majority of people who fail to accumulate money sufficient for their needs are generally easily influenced by the opinions of others. They permit the newspapers and gossiping neighbors to do their thinking for them. One of the reasons why people procrastinate is because they're looking around to see what everyone else is doing. They're gathering opinions and so forth, and they get a wide array of opinions and ideas that are contrarian and so forth. And this causes them to overthink and overanalyze and not take action based on speed of implementation. And as a result, they move on to something else, and they take very few actions in their lifetime. And as a result, they can't really grow, they can't really learn, because the real way to learn is by taking action, by being in the arena and actually doing things. Keep your own counsel. When you begin to put into practice the principles described here, by reaching your own decisions and following them, take no one into your confidence, except the members of your mastermind group, and we'll talk about this in a moment. And be very sure in your selection of this group that you choose only those who will be in complete sympathy and harmony with your purpose. It is the characteristics of people who have but a smattering or a veneer of knowledge to try and give the impression that they have much knowledge. Such people generally do too much talking. Keep your ears and eyes wide open and your mouth closed if you wish to acquire the habit of prompt decision. So the idea behind this is this. Unless there's an objective reason for you to communicate, if you're doing a presentation, if it's to create value or so forth, and move something forward, we don't necessarily need to do it. Most of the time, we have to invest in listening, learning, growing, being in the presence of people that are great at teaching, that are great at sharing their experiences, that can learn how you learn and be able to communicate in a way that will maximize your behavioral change through the words that they have, the stories that they have, the experiences, and exactly what they're teaching you. But if you keep talking, you're never going to give them a chance to be able to communicate that. A lot of times, our need to talk when we're in conversations with people comes from a place of seeking approval and validation. We want others to think we're cool. That's not what we're doing in any of these things. That has nothing to do with thinking and growing rich. Okay, because if you follow that, you're actually trying to give in to one of the fears, which is fear of criticism. In other words, thinking that, look, if I talk a lot and I show how cool I am, people will not criticize me. They'll actually think I'm a valuable person and so forth. The value of decisions depends upon the courage required to render them. The great decisions which served as the foundation of civilization were reached by assuming great risks, often meant the possibility of death. Okay, assuming great risks. We're afraid to make decisions a lot of times because of the risk. But everything has a certain degree of risk. Nothing is absolute. And while it's important to take calculated risks, it's also important to develop our ability to take rapid decisions or make rapid decisions that involve risk. Both needs to be developed at the same time. Those who reach decisions promptly and definitely know what they want and generally get it. The leaders in every walk of life decide quickly and firmly. This is the major reason why they are leaders. The world has a habit of making room for the man whose words and actions shows that he knows where he's going. Indecision is a habit which usually begins in youth. The habit takes on permanency as the youth goes through graded school, high school, and even through college without definiteness of purpose. So we recognize that indecision is something that we've been cultivating unintentionally and programming into our subconscious mind, and we need to change that. That's a very important point that we need to work on. Let's talk about persistence, chapter 9. Persistence. Persistence is an essential factor in the procedure for transmuting desire into its monetary equivalent. The basis of persistence is the power of will. Willpower and desire, when promptly combined, make an irresistible pair. Men who accumulate great fortunes are generally known as cold-blooded and sometimes ruthless. Often, they are misunderstood. What they have is willpower, which they mix with persistence and place back of their desires to ensure the attainment of their objectives. The majority of people who are ready to throw their aims and purposes overboard and give up at the first sign of opposition or misfortune, a few carry on despite all opposition until they've attained their goal. So we want to develop persistence. Persistence is something that is fueled by the burning desire. If you've got the burning desire and you're willing to cut out all the other options until the attainment of your burning desire, then you're going to have a lot more persistence. And persistence is also developed like a muscle. When you fail, you get back up, you persist, you take action again and again and again. If you get rejected and you fail, you fall down, you analyze your behaviors, your stimulus, how you got a response from the environment or whatever, what that means, you optimize, and you take action right away, speed of implementation. You go back in, and you do that over and over again, and that's how you develop persistence. Poverty is attracted to the one whose mind is favorable to it, as money is attracted to him whose mind has been deliberately prepared to attract to it, and through the same laws. Poverty consciousness will voluntarily seize the mind which is not occupied with the money consciousness. So interestingly enough, it will voluntarily seize the mind if you're not occupying with the money consciousness. If you're not incorporating success consciousness, principles and practices every day, and you're leaving yourself open, your mind will be influenced by failure consciousness. So we cannot be lazy with this. We've got to practice persistence in cultivating our mind towards success consciousness. Those who can take it are bountifully rewarded, take it, bountifully rewarded for their presence. They receive as their compensation whatever their goal they are pursuing. That is not all. They receive something infinitely more important than material compensation, the knowledge that every failure brings with it the seed of an equivalent advantage. Persistence is a state of mind. Therefore, it can be cultivated, like all states of mind. Persistence is based upon definite causes among these. So let's talk about them. Number 1, definiteness of purpose. Knowing what one wants is the first and perhaps the most important step towards the development of persistence. A strong motive forces one to surmount many difficulties. Number 2, desire. It is comparatively easy to acquire and to maintain persistence in pursuing the object of intense desire. Number 3, self-reliance. Belief in one's ability to carry out a plan encourages one to follow the plan through with persistence. Self-reliance can be developed through the principle described in the chapter of autosuggestion. Number 4, definiteness of plans. Organized plans, even though they may be weak and entirely impractical, encourage persistence. You got to have some plan. You got to be doing something and doing it, constantly doing it. Number 5, accurate knowledge. Knowing that one's plans are sound based upon experience or observation encourages persistence. Guessing instead of knowing destroys persistence. The more actions you take, the more knowledge you acquire, and the more knowledge you acquire, the more organized your plans will be based on experience and observation. Number 6, cooperation. Sympathy, understanding, and harmonious cooperation with others tend to develop persistence. Number 7, willpower. The habit of concentrating one's thoughts upon the building of plans for the attainment of definite purpose leads to persistence. And habit. Number 8, persistence is the direct result of habit. The mind absorbs and becomes a part of the daily experiences upon which it feeds. Fear, the worst of all enemies, can be effectively cured by forced repetition of acts of courage. Everyone who has seen active service in war knows this. Well, let's look at some other elements when it comes to persistence. Symptoms of lack of persistence. Okay, because persistence is so important. These principles that are outlined in the book are sound principles. Anyone who's ever created success, a high level of success, can vouch for most, or if not all, of these principles as a driving or determining factor of their success. And persistence is the element that is going to cause you to, on a regular basis, implement the principles covered in the book and revisit the book over and over again to get higher and higher levels of success and make this a lifelong dedication. And it's not something that is stressful, but it's something you actually enjoy. But if you lack persistence, here are some symptoms. Failure to recognize and clearly define exactly what one wants. Procrastination with or without cause. Lack of interest in acquiring specialized knowledge. Indecision, the habit of passing the buck on all occasions instead of facing issues squarely. The habit of relying upon alibis instead of creating definite plans for the solution of the problem. Self-satisfaction. There is but little remedy for this affliction and no hope for those who suffer from it. Indifference, usually reflected in one's readiness to compromise on all occasions rather than meet opposition and fight it. The habit of blaming others for one's mistakes and accepting unfavorable circumstances as being avoidable. Weakness of desire due to the neglect and choice of motives that impel action. Willingness, even eagerness to quit at the first sign of defeat. Lack of organized plans placed in writing where they may be analyzed. The habit of neglecting to move on ideas or to grasp opportunity when it presents itself. Wishing instead of willing. The habit of compromising with poverty instead of aiming at riches. General absence of ambition to be, to do, and to own. Searching for all the shortcuts to riches, trying to get without giving a fair equivalent, usually reflected in the habit of gambling, endeavoring to drive sharp bargains. And finally, the fear of criticism. Failure to create plans and to put them into action because of what other people think, do, or say. This enemy belongs at the head of the list because it generally exists in one's subconscious mind, where its presence is not recognized. And we're going to talk about the fears later when we get into that chapter. Let's talk about how to develop persistence. Okay? This is how we do it. A definite purpose backed by the burning desire, definite plan expressed in continuous action, a mind closed tightly against all negative and discouraging influences, including negative suggestions of relatives, friends, and acquaintances, and a friendly alliance with one or more persons who will encourage one to follow through with both plan and purpose. Now we're going to talk about the mastermind. The mastermind may be defined as coordination of knowledge and effort in a spirit of harmony between two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose. Okay, so we're looking to connect with others and coordinate with them in the spirit of mutual benefit and value, what value is to each other. And we got to be clear on that. In the spirit of harmony, two or more people for the attainment of a definite purpose, okay, a collective purpose. Now, each person can grow in their specific areas, and there's a collective purpose. And this is orchestrated, maestroed, organized, and it ensures that everybody is leveling up. And the leveling up is constantly being tested and analyzed and observed. And we're looking for strengths, weaknesses, and areas we need to improve on in coordination and in harmony. The psychic phase of the mastermind principle is much more abstract. but much more difficult to comprehend because it references into the spiritual forces with which the human race as a whole is not well acquainted. You may catch a significant suggestion from this statement. No two minds ever come together without thereby creating a third, invisible, intangible force, which may be likened to a third mind. So this is even more true when you have two people that have trust, they like each other, they know, or even more than two, that each other is out for the best interest of themselves and the group. They're not doing it because of, groupthink in the sense, this is not, we're not talking about groupthink here, where it's like a political structure that's formed so that everybody can have a certain baseline of lack of tension, etc. There is a moving forward instead. And when all parties feel the growth and they're all in sync, they start to notice that they create ideas, inspirations, ways of doing things that only come as the collaboration is experienced through the mastermind. Number 11, chapter 11, the mystery of sex transmutation. The meaning of the word transmute is, in simple language, the changing or transferring of one element of form of energy into another. The emotion of sex brings into being a state of mind. Because of ignorance on the subject, the state of mind is generally associated with the physical, and because of improper influences to which most people have been subjected in acquiring knowledge of sex, these things essentially physical have highly biased the mind. So think about that for a moment. Look at reality that we live in right now. Look at the media, look at information, and look at what a lot of people are doing and how they see this powerful emotion. Okay, they see it as a way to express through physical outlets. What they don't understand is that sex transmutation is as simple and easily explained is by means of switching the mind from thoughts of a physical expression to thoughts of some other nature. You can actually take the sexual desire that a person has, which is oftentimes the most powerful of human desires, and when driven by this desire, men and women develop keenness of imagination, courage, willpower, persistence, and creative ability unknown to them at other times. So strong and impelling is the desire for sexual contact that men freely run the risk of life and reputation to indulge in it. When harnessed, however, and redirected along other lines, this motivating force maintains all of its attributes of keenness of imagination, courage, etc., which may be used as powerful creative forces in literature, art, or in any other profession or calling, including, of course, the accumulation of riches. So it's to take energy that you're experiencing, in this case, sexual energy, and working to cultivate and transmute it towards creative outlets. You'll find that when you have a high buildup of this energy, that you'll actually be more driven, you will be more motivated, you are more likely to take action. And recognizing that maybe you're doing all these things to actually get the physical expression is part of it, but what we can do is essentially, in a way you can say, trick the mind to use this energy to create a lot of things, and do it for the purpose of, and not to say that the physical expression is wrong or anything like that. Definitely there's a time and place for that, but we're talking about how to work with the abundance of this energy that we have so we can actually use it for creative outlets. The transmutation of sex energy calls for the exercise of willpower, to be sure, but the reward is worth the effort. The desire for sexual expression is inborn and natural. The desire cannot and should not be submerged or eliminated, but it should be given an outlet through forms of expression which enrich the body, mind, and spirit of man. If not given this form of outlet through transmutation, it will seek outlets through purely physical channels. And what you'll find is a lot of times when you seek outlets through purely physical channels, you'll waste a lot of time and you'll do a whole bunch of things that will take you away from your chief aim, and as a result will actually even set you back and make you feel frustrated and so forth. A madman is not essentially different than a dope madman. Both have lost control over their faculties of reason and willpower. Sexual overindulgence may not only destroy reason and willpower, but it may also lead to either temporary or permanent insanity. Many cases of hypochondria, imaginary illnesses, grow out of habits developed in ignorance of the true function of sex. Love, romance, and sex are all emotions capable of driving men to heights of superachievement. Love is the emotion which serves as a safety valve and ensures balance, poise, and constructive effort. When combined, these three emotions may lift one up to an attitude, or altitude, I should say, of a genius. Number 12, the subconscious mind. I know we've already talked very extensively about the subconscious mind, but it doesn't hurt to talk even more about the subconscious mind. And the reason why we want to talk more and more about the subconscious mind is, I mentioned this before, it's the repetition, okay, the repetition of constantly hearing the same information over and over again, and then even hearing it from multiple different perspectives, that causes us to accept a very powerful truth that, look, we can reprogram our subconscious mind. This is something that we can do. A lot of information that's available doesn't really talk about this. Okay, we don't really spend a lot of time learning and talking about the subconscious mind and how to reprogram it. So, because there is information available on it, and the more we consume it, the more we can catch ourselves and be aware when we're unintentionally, or without even being aware of it, programming our subconscious mind by allowing certain information to seep in. If you constantly consume information about how to reprogram the subconscious mind, you'll become more present and aware, and you will allow certain information in, and you will prevent certain information from going in that's not going to help you. The subconscious mind consists of a field of consciousness in which every impulse of thought that reaches the objective mind through any of the five senses is classified and recorded, and from which thoughts may be recalled or withdrawn as letters may be taken from a filing cabinet. It receives and files sense impressions or thoughts regardless of their nature. You may voluntarily plant in your subconscious mind any plan, thought, or purpose which you desire to translate into its physical or monetary equivalent. The subconscious mind acts first on the dominating desires which have been mixed with emotion feelings such as faith. The subconscious mind works day and night. Through a method of procedure unknown to man, the subconscious mind draws upon the forces of infinite intelligence for the power with which it voluntarily transmutes one's desires into their physical equivalent, making use always of the most practical media by which this end may be accomplished. After you have accepted as a reality the existence of the subconscious mind and understand its possibilities as a medium for transmuting your desires into their physical or monetary equivalent, you will comprehend the full significance of the instructions given in the chapter of desire. You will also understand why you have been repeatedly admonished to make your desires clear and to reduce them to writing. You will also understand the necessity of persistence in carrying out the instructions. The subconscious mind will not remain idle. If you fail to plant desires in your subconscious mind, it will feed upon the thoughts which reach it as a result of your neglect. Your subconscious mind is more susceptible to influence by impulses of thought mixed with feeling or emotion than by those originating solely in the reasoning portion of the mind. In fact, there is so much evidence to support the theory that only emotionalized thoughts have any action influence upon the subconscious mind. So let's talk about the 7 major positive emotions, because we want to use these emotions to facilitate programming the subconscious mind. It's through these emotions, when combined with thoughts and ideas and the things that we're thinking about, that will program the subconscious mind. Notice that there is positive ones and negative ones. So negative ones will do it also, but we want to avoid it because it creates issues when we associate it with certain thoughts. So 7 major positive emotions: desire, faith, sex, enthusiasm, hope, and romance. And to be avoided: fear, jealousy, hatred, revenge, greed, superstition, and anger. Now let's look at these negative ones, because a lot of times when we think about what we want, we might find ourselves attaching some of these emotions. And because this is Think and Grow Rich, we have to think, and there's emotions involved with the thinking. And we have to make sure that we're not incorporating any of these emotions in here, because it's going to distort our ability to be able to create and attract and put out that vibration that we want to move us forward in the direction that we'd like. Positive and negative emotions cannot occupy the mind at the same time. One or the other must dominate. It is your responsibility to make sure that positive emotions constitute the dominating influence of your mind. Here, the law of habit will come to your aid. And I also did a video on the power of habit by Charles Duhigg. I recommend you watch that video. The habits are going to allow us to not only program the subconscious mind, but even the conscious mind. We're able to actually rewire our brain. A good book to read is A Brain That Changes Itself through habit. From the ability of applying and using the positive emotions. Eventually, they will dominate your mind so completely that the negatives cannot enter it. The method by which you may communicate with infinite intelligence is very similar to that through which the vibration of sound is communicated by radio. If you understand the working principle of radio, you of course know that sound cannot be communicated through the ether until it has been stepped up or changed into a rate of vibration which the human ear cannot detect. The radio sending station picks up the sound of the human voice and scrambles or modifies it by stepping up the vibration millions of times. Only in this way can the vibration of sound be communicated through the ether. After this transformation has taken place, the ether picks up the energy which originally was in the form of vibration of sound, carries the energy to radio receiving stations, and these receiving sets step up that energy back down to its original rate of vibration so it is recognized as sound. This is a good segue into the next chapter and how he looks at the brain. So let's talk about that. More than 20 years ago, the author, working in conjunction with the late Dr. Alexander Graham Bell and Dr. Elmer Gates, observed that every human brain is both a broadcasting and receiving station for the vibration of thought. Through the medium of the ether, in a fashion similar to that employed by the radio broadcasting principle, every human brain is capable of picking up vibrations of thought which are being released by other brains. When stimulated or stepped up to a higher rate of vibration, the mind becomes more receptive to the vibration of thought which reaches it through the ether from outside sources. This stepping up process takes place through the positive emotions or the negative emotions. Through the emotions, the vibration of thought may be increased. Vibrations of an exceedingly high rate are the only vibrations picked up and carried by the ether from one brain to another. Thought is the energy traveling at an exceedingly high rate of vibration. Thought, which has been modified or stepped up by any of the major emotions, vibrates at a much higher rate than ordinary thought. And it is this type of thought which passes from one brain to another through the broadcasting machinery of the human brain. The subconscious mind is the sending station for the brain through which vibrations of thoughts are broadcast. The creative imagination is the receiving set through which the vibrations of thoughts are picked up from the ether. Sometimes men speak lightly of the intangibles, the things which they cannot perceive through any of their five senses. And when we hear them, it should remind us that all of us are controlled by forces which are unseen and tangible. So we don't really have a concrete understanding of how reality works. And there are many different metaphysical models and elements as far as spirituality that are misunderstood or not really worked with. And this information that's contained within the book, when he talks about vibration, the brain, the ether, and so forth, infinite intelligence, may not even be real. Like, we don't even know if that's actually true. It's really something that people experience, and many spiritual texts talk about this from many different perspectives, these elements. But one thing that we do know is that when you're in a certain consciousness, way of thinking, way of looking at reality, things look differently. And we get ideas, we get inspirations, and a lot of times, and I'll speak from my own personal experience, I don't know where these things, these ideas and so forth come from. This model that he's put together here is a good model for understanding and making sense of it. It's metaphysical, so essentially understanding metaphysical, and it requires creating conceptual models that we can kind of visualize in our mind. And it's not physically real. You can say not physically real, but we kind of know it's there. So this is where you can get really deep into this stuff, and we're not necessarily going to go there, but what we are going to talk about is that when we keep ourselves in a certain state of mind, success consciousness, when we program our subconscious mind for empowering thoughts, when we remove the fears, we're more likely to tap into this creative imagination, and we're more likely to get the optimal ideas to create the results we want, to optimize the actions we take, and so forth. And we're more likely to do all this from a place of love, unconditional love, and faith, and we're more motivated to do it, and we become actually more aware about the energies of people around us and information and so forth, and we can prevent ourselves from going in directions that will lead to some negative outcomes because we can sense it, we can feel it, and we can actually navigate ourselves more towards a positive outcome because we sense it and we feel it in what he calls vibrations. And so number 14, chapter 14, gets even more far out, the sixth sense. The 13 principles, as known as the sixth sense, through which infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort or demands by the individual. This principle is the apex of the philosophy. It can be assimilated, understood, and applied only by first mastering the other 12 principles. So this is where somebody who experiences this almost in a way has transcended, and they appear to be a certain way. They appear to be very intuitive to the sense where everything they touch turns to gold. They always find themselves in the right opportunities. They're able to express themselves very clearly and so forth. And during this time, they're essentially experiencing this, what he talks about, where infinite intelligence may and will communicate voluntarily without any effort or demands. And all the ideas that they're generating is happening real time as they communicate it. You can say that this is at the point where, when connected to the infinite intelligence, you're connecting to the infinite intelligence and demonstrating to others that, hey, everyone can do this also, and thus they can also communicate from this perspective. The sixth sense is that portion of the subconscious mind which has been referred to as the creative imagination. It has also been referred to as the receiving set through which ideas, plans, and thoughts flash into the mind. The flashes are sometimes called hunches or inspirations. The sixth sense defies description. It cannot be described to a person who has not mastered other principles of this philosophy, because such a person has no knowledge and no experience with the sixth sense may be compared. Understanding of the sixth sense comes only by meditation through mind development from within. The sixth sense probably is the medium of contact between the finite mind of man and the infinite intelligence, and for this reason it is a mixture of both the mental and the spiritual. It is believed to be the point in which the mind of man contacts the universal mind. Through the aid of the sixth sense, you'll be warned of impeding dangers in time to avoid them, and notified of opportunities in time to embrace them. There's been a lot of entrepreneurs that consider themselves to be intuitive entrepreneurs. And a lot of times I experience that to be true about myself. As much as I like to draw the graphs and measure things out, there are times where I just know that it's the right decision, and I could just feel it, and it's just something that you just know with absolute certainty. And there are certain times where I know it's not the wrong, it's the wrong decision. And if I violate that intuitive nudge, I find out that I should have listened to it. And if I go along with it, it produces a result, and oftentimes in a very unexplainable way, which then I can go and reverse engineer and kind of put it by connecting the dots. Now, Steve Jobs said this really well. You can't connect the dots looking forward. You can only connect them looking backwards. And one of the books that he was really interested in, that apparently was the only book he had on his iPhone or iPad, was the autobiography of the yogi by Paramahansa Yogananda. And it's the yogis and the Himalayan yogis and Paramahansa who talk about these kind of connections to infinite intelligence, the sixth sense, and these abilities that humans have access to, but they have not cultivated because it's not often talked about in a Western culture. So it's worth researching and studying this stuff, and it can take you kind of deep into different areas and so forth of thought and how reality works. and can also put you in a place where it can be very empowering. However, what I like to focus on is more of how to work on developing and cultivating these very principles that are contained within this book for the specific outcome, for the specific net results. And I don't like to personally spend too much time researching and studying how all that stuff works. It's not really of interest to me. But I do know this, that I do tap into some of these abilities that fall under these categories that are being described here. And while I do not try to investigate so far how they work, I do notice that we all have access to it. And it's not as weird as it sounds. Once you've been practicing the principles, you'll know what I'm talking about. You can just be associated. And, even CEOs, I believe, or certain people in business who aren't necessarily studying all this stuff about the sixth sense and what the Himalayan yogis can do and so forth, actually have these abilities, and they do it, and they don't really talk about it or really understand how it works. But what you do find is that they're practicing every principle that we talked about in his book, and that's why he says that you can only really understand this material after you've implemented to a high degree what you learned in this book. The sixth sense is not something that one can take off and put on at will. The ability to use this great power comes slowly through application of the other principles outlined in this book. Seldom does any individual come into a workable knowledge of the sixth sense before the age of 40. More often, the knowledge is not available until one is well past 50, and this for the reason that the spiritual forces with which the sixth sense is so closely related do not mature and become usable except through years of meditation, self-examination, and serious thought. And so now we reach the final chapter, which is how to outwit the six ghosts of fear, which is a very important element of this book, because essentially we want to be driven from abundance and empowerment and persistence in that direction, and recognize that the fears show up. There's many fears that show up that hinder our progress. We're going to talk about this. And by working to overcome these fears, we can better program our subconscious mind. We can better understand why we do what we do and why we think what we think. And we can better organize our thinking so that it's in alignment with creating the riches, whether it be financial wealth or whatever kind of results you want in your life. Before you can put any portion of this philosophy into successful use, your mind must be prepared to receive it. The preparation is not difficult. It begins with study, analysis, and understanding of the three enemies which you shall have to clear out. These are indecision, doubt, and fear. Okay, so we're going to talk about fear now. The sixth sense, in reference to the last chapter, will never function while these three negatives or any of them remain in your mind. Okay? The members of this unholy trio are closely related. Where one is found, the other two are close at hand. Indecision is the seedling of fear. Okay? Indecision is the seedling of fear. Remember this as you read. Indecision crystallizes into doubt. The two blend and become fear. What are the six basic fears? First, you got fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of ill health, fear of loss of love or someone, fear of old age, and fear of death. Now think about these particular fears and recognize the stories you tell yourself that actually cause you to embrace these fears. And remember right now that this is Think and Grow Rich, and you can change your way of thinking. You can reprogram your subconscious mind. And so it is really valuable, and this is something that I put a lot of effort and work on in my life, to create autosuggestions, affirmations, exercises, etc., and experiences and consumption of certain information and so forth while avoiding others to overcome these fears. And what I find is that the more I overcome these fears to a greater degree, and they still show up for me in certain areas, but the more I overcome them, the more I act with confidence, the more results I get, the more I'm able to explore and actually do things that one time I wasn't able to do because I was afraid of whatever reason, poverty, criticism, so forth, and thus have amazing life experiences. The higher I could raise the bar, every time I achieve a goal, I raise the bar higher because I realize I have far more capacity. It's amazing how many things you could do when you overcome these fears. Fears are nothing more than a state of mind. One state of mind is subject to control and direction. Man can create nothing which he does not first conceive in the form of an impulse of thought. Following this statement comes another of still greater importance, namely, man's thought impulses begin to translate themselves into their physical equivalent whenever those thoughts are voluntary or involuntary. So there's a section here called the Devil's Workshop. I want to talk about this because it's a very important point. And I think this is built and was the not prerequisite, but the very related discussion was continued in Outwitting the Devil, which is a discussion that I did, and I recommend you watch that video. Also by Napoleon Hill. I'll put a link in the description. In addition to the 6 basic fears, there is another evil by which people suffer. It constitutes a rich soil in which seeds of failure grow abundantly. It is so subtle that its presence often is not detected. This affliction cannot properly be classed as a fear. It is more deeply seated and more often fatal than all of the 6 fears. For want of a better name, let us call this evil susceptibility to negative influences. Men who accumulate great riches always protect themselves against this evil, susceptibility to negative influences. Taking an inventory of your life and seeing where you're being negatively influenced is a starting point and an ongoing journey of reprogramming your subconscious mind and protecting yourself and recalibrating towards success. To protect yourself against negative influences, here are some points. To protect yourself against negative influences, whether of your own making or the result of the activities of negative people around you, recognize that you have a willpower and put it into constant use until it builds a wall of immunity against negative influences in your own mind. That means picking and choosing what kind of information you control, what environments you participate in, and so forth, situations. Recognize that the fact that you are and every other human being are by nature lazy, indifferent, and susceptible to all suggestions which harmonize with your weaknesses. Recognizing that you are and working on it. Recognizing that you are also by nature susceptible to all the 6 basic fears and set up habits for the purpose of counteracting all these fears. Set up habits for counteracting all these fears. Recognize that negative influences often work on you through your subconscious mind. Therefore, they are difficult to detect, and keep your mind closed against all people who depress or discourage you in any way, and deliberately seek the company of people who influence you to think and act for yourself. Without doubt, the most common weakness of all human beings is the habit of leaving their minds open to the negative influence of other people. Remember, you have absolute control over but one thing, and that is your thoughts. This is the most significant and inspiring of all facts known to man. It reflects man's divine nature. The divine prerogative is the sole means by which you may control your own destiny. If you fail to control your own mind, you may be sure you will control nothing else. So if you want to create the results that you want, you have to learn how to control your mind first. We've covered many elements. This has been the lengthiest video that I've ever done, and for very important reason, because it's such a very powerful book. And what I've discovered in my journey, the absolute paramount thing is that you become what you think about. And thus, what I think about is of absolute importance to myself. And thus, I want it to be an absolute importance to you because I know you want to level up your success. And I've done a lot of work over myself over the years to recultivate or to cultivate the level of thinking that I have that produces a result. And as I level up, I take the next steps based on everything that was covered in this book here. So I wanted it to be a lengthy video, not because it was lengthy and I just wanted to talk a lot, but I wanted to cover the magnitude, and there's the only way I could cover it is through making it very detailed and lengthy because it was based on my experience. Mind control is the result of self-discipline and habit. You either control your mind or it controls you. There is no halfway compromise. Most The most practical of all method for controlling the mind is the habit of keeping it busy with a definite purpose, backed by a definite plan. Remember that. The most practical of all methods for controlling the mind is the habit of keeping it busy with a definite purpose, backed by a definite plan. That means that you are working on your definite purpose with a definite plan. You are optimizing, you are growing, you are studying, and you are consuming the information, and you're ensuring that the information is empowering and reprogramming your subconscious mind to move you in the direction. And you are testing, you're litmus testing, and you're seeing the kind of results you get, and you're evaluating, and you're self-aware, and you're observing the inner dialogue, the thoughts you are having, and you're rewriting the programming as you move towards your specific, worthwhile objective. This has been a discussion on the Think and Grow Rich book by Napoleon Hill, which is a classic. Recommend you read it multiple times, reread it over and over again, and get a copy of this mind map by clicking the link in the description of the video. Thank you very much for watching. I will talk to you soon. Take care.